I mix what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like.
Yeah, what's up, world? Welcome to another edition of I Mix What I Like right here, Black Power Media. Again, I'm Jared Ball, joined by my main man, Geechee. Y'all, we expect Brother Diallo to be here directly. Quick start, quick go. What's up, sir? How you doing this morning?
Cooler, man. How you doing?
I'm as good as to be expected. Shout out to you and all the remixers who are I know piling in, and to those who will see this here later. Shout out to you as well.
What Diallo at, man? He got clipped up by Talib and them.
I don't know. He might. I mean, he was talking so much trash, got so much, and I was expecting it. I need him to show up because I got a beef with Diallo. I got an issue with Diallo, causing all these problems in these social media streets. So we got to work that out as this partnership continues on. What's up, everybody? Good to see you out there. Welcome, 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 welcome. Make sure all of this is in your socials. Make sure you're sharing the link to the live and inviting your crew to join you. Don't be stingy. Geechee, do me a favor. Ask Diallo where he at, man, because he started all this drama, and now he's not going. And now he's going to show up late like a diva.
I just text him, man. He said he coming. He booting up his computer. See.
Booting up his computer. Yeah, exactly. So please do check out all the content lately. The Remix Morning Show, of course. My own pop-ups, Mix What I Likes. The Guerrilla Intellectual University that started this week. A lot of stuff has been dropping. So make sure you're all caught up. Make sure you have the bells selected and all that good stuff so you don't miss anything. Who's okay. What else? Anyway, yeah, man, Geechee, gonna start this up and then so real quick, let me say this. So I watched I just real quick. I watched with my oldest daughter, I watched the movie Inception for the first time. I really do actually like that movie. As commercial films go. So we watched Inception the other day. And for those who have seen it, obviously there's the issue with DiCaprio's character and the thimble that he spins to make sure he's in his real reality. And I couldn't help we watched this film, and then 2 days later, as all the discussion continues to occur around the passing of the only and original GOAT of world football, Nascimento, Edson Nascimento, otherwise known as Pele, Edson Nantes Nascimento, right? Isn't that his middle name? Anyway, but somebody was telling this story that took place in the 70s, traveling with Pele and being in a hotel room and walking into the room, and he sees that Pele has taken a thimble and put it on the table and spun it. And the dude was like, what's that all about? And he said, and he said Pele's response was, with all the travel, with all the games, with all the notoriety, with all the fame, he had already, I think, won his third World Cup at that time. He was already a super international, super global superstar, made literally a national resource by the leaders of Brazil. He said, I do this to make sure, always to remind myself of my reality and to keep myself grounded. I said, damn. I said, so even as the GOAT, the best player in football, he was already prefiguring Inception. He was incepting before Inception. So anyway, speaking of incepted before Inception, there he is. Brother Diallo, good morning. Welcome, sir. Greetings to you.
Shit started, man. You're gonna mess it up for all of us. We gonna get
I got beef with you. I want to start off by greeting you, welcoming you. Hope you and yours are well. But then I got beef. So out the gate, Diallo, I just
vegan beef.
Say, you are, of course, your own man, free thinker, all of that. But you out here messing it up for your people. I got a second edition book coming out in the spring. I got to get on some promo. And you out here picking fights with all the biggest podcasters, all the celebrities, all out here. And by association, they might see I'm 1 or 2 clicks over. And I'm like, I can't. So I turn around, I blink. And in 2 seconds, you over here picking fights with the gods,
God MCs,
with the gods themselves, with the
coach's top thought leader.
You picking fights with Dave Chappelle and Talib Kweli. Who are they trying to do? Diallo is go to Africa and do free concerts
and be the answer. Come on, bro.
And be the answer. He said, being the answer
no,
in the motherland.
We ain't never gonna make it a drink champs. We can go ahead and forget that shit.
I'm trying to get on Drink Champs.
Nah, it's a wrap.
I'm trying to get on Talib's podcast. I got promo work to do, man. And you out here saying, what did you say? What did you say? So Talib posts this, and then here come Diallo. Here come Diallo. The answer.
Pan-African.
No, just be entertaining, not the answer. We need y'all to stop thinking the ability to rap or tell jokes makes you the answer to any of the issues confronted Africa or black people in general. In Ghana being entertainers. Hashtag class con. God damn.
Killing. Diallo, your audio ain't working, I don't think.
Your audio's not working. No. And that's fine, because I don't think we need to hear from you no more anyway. You over here fucking everything up. I'm over here trying to get
fucking up the bag.
To level up.
This nigga done fucked up the bag. Hey, go to his response though. Talib going in on your boy.
And then this is what you end up I'm not here to entertain you goofies, and I never cast myself as your leader. Stop projecting.
Bars.
Hey. Oh no, that's somebody talking at him. Hold on.
Jay, where your drop at? Where your drop? I came at a battle so and so. I need that drop.
The bars?
Yeah. What's the guy say?
Yeah, listen. That's called my boy. You know nothing about that.
No, the other one. He said he came at a battle so and so, but didn't show up.
I was supposed to battle. But he was scared. But since he ain't here,
although Diallo left, although math might have to math. Unfortunately for me, I'm gonna have to watch it. I saw the first clip drop from EYL's return to his EYL just did a thing on their platform.
Oh, Matt Hopper?
Yeah. I haven't gotten to it yet, but I saw it show up in my feed. I was like, oh Lord, have mercy.
They're gonna be on Trevor Noah next because they're making their rounds. They're
making their rounds. They're gonna be on Comedy Central next.
The coach's top thought leader.
Yo, hey, this dude is crazy, man. 19 Savage. I call him 19 Savage and 21 Keys. But 19 Savage, he got some problems.
Well, Diallo got the problems now because he messed with the wrong one. And then like Sister here says, why are you tearing down our brothers?
That's all. Black men just trying to win out here. Look at Michael Blackson in the back, scratch his head like, what the fuck I'm doing here?
Oh wow, I didn't even realize that was him.
Is that Trey Truth too?
I don't even know who that is. I don't know who the other cats are. That's in that Sway.
Sway, you don't got the answer, Sway.
Yeah.
Diallo can get the joke.
Man, I'm trying to get on Sway, man.
Nah,
trying to be on Sway in the morning.
The only Sway you getting on is the New York Times Sway.
That's messed up, man. I can't promote my book. Man.
I hope you did, man. I wasn't thinking. I can go apologize.
You over here calling Kanye? You calling this boy Kanye?
Oh, that ain't Trey Truth.
By the way, folks, just real quick, Dr. Clara Mattei is coming on with us at 9 o'clock to talk about her work on austerity. So there might be an elevation to this show later on. Maybe. I don't know.
Diallo.
Yes.
Dave Chappelle look kind of stocky. Though. I don't know if you want. He look like he been wait.
I know how you get buff like that. He used
look
to
like
be
he been working
lanky
out.
and skinny like me. I don't know how he got buff like that.
He said he was only skinny from not eating due to stress, and then he started eating more and working out.
I work out.
Yeah, look now.
I work out.
Don't be in the boys' chat if you can't fight now.
They ain't gonna put their hands on nobody. I just can't believe he's like in Ghana being the answer. And then he called me a culture vulture and a groupie.
Groupie? Yeah.
That's messed up.
Dude? And you got people spitting French Portuguese, not French Portuguese, French Creole.
And you know,
Diallo, real quick, man, is there any way possible you would happen to have some headphones? It's just that the echo, we do get some feedback, unfortunately.
Oh, hold on. Yeah, I got headphones.
I would appreciate it. Okay, I'd appreciate it. Man,
hey,
he had a lot to say, man.
He was in his feelings, yo.
I just left it alone. I walked away from it.
Who's Almighty Jab? Who's the white supremacist Almighty Jab? Who is that?
Never heard. Oh my gosh.
Wow. He said that's your person, that's your people, and it's 16 posts.
I don't know that person.
What?
That's what he tagged him there. He said when white supremacists like that are on your team. Isn't that what he said?
To be honest, I kind of left the conversation.
Yeah, this guy here, he's really just a fanboy. Chappelle, he's helping himself stay relevant. Oh, maybe he's agreeing with you, and that dude is, and then Talib is saying that's a white supremacist on your team.
I don't know that guy. I don't know Talib. I just don't like him being the answer in Africa. Like, you notice something, right?
I mean, it is. I will agree. It is a pretty pretentious. I mean, it's pretentious saying that we hear. Where is the thing saying? Where's the caption?
So remember now, in the chats, he's saying that they're making a pun to Kanye's "We Don't Have the Answers," and these are all.
Right, with Sway, of course. I didn't even get it. Okay, that's funny. That's funny.
These are all the people who used to rock with Kanye and now they
right.
don't rock with him no more.
Right.
Thank you. Oh, that makes sense. So that's funny. That's funny then.
I spoke to that as well because, like, number one, that ain't got nothing to do with Africa. Number two, they was rocking with Kanye over decades of bullshit. Kanye was putting Confederate flags and disrespecting our community long before. They didn't cut Kanye off until he got in trouble. They didn't cut off Kanye. They didn't cut off Kanye until he got in trouble with the Jews.
Oh, now you just said the magic words. Come on, man.
They were rocking with Kanye through all of his disrespect of the black community and our ancestors. They didn't cut him off.
You could say it differently, right? Theoretically, right? That they were rocking with him until he went into his anti-Semitism. You're not making room for that.
I don't think black people could be anti-Semitic. I don't think black people.
But from their perspective,
I don't think black people can be Islamophobic. But the stuff they say we is. But yeah, until he went Nazi. I don't know.
And they still rocking with the white boys that Kanye rock with.
But in all seriousness, though, theoretically, or philosophically, I can understand rocking with someone until they go too far. Then you don't rock with them anymore. And then he has himself turned on all of them too. He said that they are all sellouts and coons and traitors and are bought off and this, that, and the third. So that part. So all I'm saying is I think that part is funny. I think
it's funny, but it's funny. And he could have said, "Oh, nah, I'm not saying I'm the answer in Africa. I'm not the answer."
He wasn't saying he was the answer for Africa and Africans. He was saying he's in Africa being the answer. But
here's the thing. When you said rocking with somebody until they go too far, putting Confederate flags and selling Confederate flags and taking, hostile positions and insensitive positions to our history, our stances, our struggles is not too far. And so when you say rocking with somebody until they go too far, these dudes, they can say, he can get on there and say all type of reckless stuff and post anti-black symbols on his clothing. So when Kanye was putting Confederate flags on $100 hoodies, that wasn't too far for these revolutionary black men. But then putting swastikas on Twitter, all of a sudden they're like, no. So they're in the same camp as Kanye. You can punch down, you can target vulnerable people, you can disrespect your own race, but don't disrespect people who had the power and signed the checks. So, and then on top of that, Talib talking about he's a revolutionary Pan-Africanist. So no, I don't think they should be patting themselves on their back because they stopped rocking with Kanye in 2022. When Kanye been on bullshit since the 90s.
I would just like to say to the booking agents of those respective podcasts that I am still available and would like to promote my book. The views of Diallo are not representative of blah, blah, blah. I got a book to promote. I don't know why this fool was talking so much trash about these good, upstanding, revolutionary black men. I don't know.
Shout out to Busta Rhymes in the comments too. Look at Busta.
Busta Rhymes in the comments.
Is that Busta Bus?
If that was really Busta Rhymes, you know what I'm saying? I would really feel like we got somewhere. He is in my top whatever, straight up.
I mean, he got the blue check. I mean, I don't know.
We got a blue check in the chat.
No, not our chat. Not our chat. I'm talking about.
Oh, not our chat. Oh, in the picture. Oh, no, that is the real Busta Rhymes. Yeah, I'm absolutely king, right? Isn't that the crown?
Yeah, man. These dudes talking about that. Look, hey,
Diamond D
in Ghana being the answer, and this goes deeper than that because everybody's going to Africa now. Meek Mill was in Africa. Kanye, what's that? Not Kanye. Jay-Z and Beyonce made the year of return. Mm-hmm. And remember, just before they were all going to Africa, just in the early 2020s, remember those same individuals were all posting pictures from Dubai. Remember? Mm-hmm. They were all going to the United Arab Emirates, E40, all these celebrities to just pick a chic and hip destination spot where everybody turns up. And so they go to Africa, and Meek Mill just said he's about to go to Nigeria, and they were all going to South Africa, Oprah opening stuff. This stuff never pans out good. Black celebrities have been going to Africa since the Rumble in the Jungle or Louis Armstrong's tour of the Congo. Black celebrities have been going to Africa and making a big thing of black people, and they have always, to the person, kind of been Trojan horses for U.S. imperialism and Western incursions, deeper in Western incursions into the African continent. And it's even deeper than that. So when prominent Negroes show up, I think about when they use Louis Armstrong to infiltrate and the Congo and to provide distraction for the assassination of Lumumba. The whole Rumble in the Jungle with Mobutu, and had every prominent Negro when Ali versus Foreman. Ali versus Foreman.
Louis Armstrong. Went over there,
and all these businessmen were part of their entourage making deals to extract Africa's resources. So I get nervous. Y'all have to forgive me. I got trauma.
Has anybody done the work to support what my godfather told me, with Mr. Tom Porter told me some years ago, that he noted the parallel between Don King and those Muhammad Ali, the Rumble in the Jungle, the one in the Philippines with Joe Frazier, that they match up with U.S. imperial overthrow operations. So so to just add that, I don't know, has anybody done the work on that to confirm that? And real quick, I also always point out in 2015, while Secretary of State Hillary Clinton flat out admitted proudly that they intend to use the distribution of rappers around the world as part
Yes.
of a pro-US. She didn't use the word imperialist, but
right. Remember when Jay-Z and Beyonce went to Cuba just before they reinstituted the sanctions against Cuba, and they were talking about opening up against Cuba. Black celebrities from the United States going back over a century, going back. So Louis Armstrong is probably one of the most prominent cases of this. Black celebrities have always been chosen horses for U.S. imperialism.
But Talib used to do Black August events with Malcolm X grassroots movement. So
real quick,
maybe they are being the answer, and we should talk about it on their podcast when they invite me on.
If you look at the exchange, 1 second. If you look at the exchange where he's talking about, oh, this was just a joke, dating back to that Kanye Sway confrontation, he did go on to say, yes, we are influencing and we are making changes and bringing changes. And so he was talking about they are the answer. And then he tried to backtrack and say, oh, this was just a joke when I called it out. But then he didn't turn around and say, we are black men who came from nothing, who had nothing and became wildly successful. So they are over there selling the American dream to Africans. If you work hard, you got a wicked jump shot, you got some sick rhymes, you can tell some jokes, you can buy charter jets across the continent and be the answer. So he was one moment in one line he's talking about, oh, I'm just kidding, and then in the next line he's like, yeah, we are here being influencers, we are here having an impact, a positive impact. And Khalib said he's a revolutionary pan-Africanist, so he's bringing it there to speak to the struggles and issues of African people. And and Dave Chappelle just jumped off of Elon Musk's lap. He just got out. He just, been kicking it with Joe Rogan and J.K. Rowling and all these other reactionary white folks. And so because he told me when I said, Dave Chappelle said, Malcolm X and Martin Luther King died penniless, and he don't want nothing to do with that.
That clip, Geechee. Oh my God. So I'm with you. I'm definitely with you on the Elon Musk and the JK and all, and this new group of friends that they like to run with. But Geechee, when you shared that piece, man, go ahead, man.
Yeah, no, I'm still feeling some type of way about.
And where's the link on that? Send me the link to that when you get a chance. But go ahead and make your point though. Yeah, my bad.
I posted on my Insta.
But Joe Rogan being Dino from H-Town's he's his daughter. Dino from H-Town's daughter is Joe Rogan's stepdaughter now. I don't know if y'all remember Dino from H-Town.
Wait, what?
Rocking the Boots?
I know the song. I'm saying.
You better go somewhere with that.
Man, listen, you got to be a hood nigga to listen to R&B. Anyway,
then I guess R&B.
So Dino from H-Town, his daughter is Joe Rogan's daughter now. That's his stepdaughter. But I'm still kind of like, I found that out last week and I'm like mind blown. But
wait, because he married what?
Dino had a baby with a white lady before he died, and that white lady is married to Joe Rogan now. So Dino's daughter is Joe Rogan's stepdaughter, adopted stepdaughter, whatever the case may be.
On behalf of everybody in that I have no authority over, I don't accept that a title goes to his daughter. That's my mama's husband.
Well,
that's not my stepfather. That's my mama's husband. That's my mama's new husband. That's my mama's replacement, maybe financial upgrade husband.
Is that why? Is that because he has a black daughter? Is that why Joe Rogan feel he can just say the nigger and nigger? And
I mean, that's what he said. That was his
racial black slurs because he has a quote unquote black daughter.
Is that how it works? Is it why any white person would engage in a relationship with a black person to get that pass?
Don't try that with me.
But that's not my point.
If ever gets me a white woman, she better not ever think that I'm gonna pass for her. If I gets me a white woman, I'm gonna let her know from day one. I am not a certification or ticket for you to use the N word.
Hey, look,
it ain't funny. I keeps it real.
No, who's the comedian that? My bad. Go ahead.
No, I want to make this so.
I don't know how y'all deal with y'all white women, but that's how I intend to deal with my white women.
I don't know about the pink toes. Listen, when you when you having a conversation with Talib, right? There's this point where Talib thrusts to say, "Oh, you ain't here for dialogue, and if you was open for dialogue." And I'm asking this because I think the three of us have different approaches. Diallo is way, way rougher than me. I think I'm really like engageable.
Then I'm the softy of the group.
No, but Jared, you do have a way to not really lose your temper or lose your cool. So you come way cooler and approachable. I think I'm kind of halfway. Diallo just over there. But all of us still get the same results because people still feel some type of way when you even do challenge. So is there a way?
I still haven't been on the podcast.
That's what I'm saying. You're not getting invites. Shit, we ain't getting invites. You ain't getting invites. But do people think it's a way to approach these people to actually provoke dialogue? Because you've had dialogue with Killer Mike internally. I had with Charlemagne. I don't know if Diallo been talking to what's your homeboy named Rap Snacks?
Wise Intelligent?
Wise. But none of those seem like they go anywhere because there's this response. So I don't think this idea of approaching them correctly I don't even think that's possible. Like, I don't think there's a way to approach them where they not feel some type of way.
No, here's the problem. Let me tell you what your problem is. Because Umar talked more reckless than all three of us put together. Real talk. Umar talks more reckless than all three of us put together. So they bring Umar on as a caricature of Pan-Africanism. Your problem is if you can articulate the issues and not be made into a caricature or a soundboard for their petty little insults, but you can truly challenge and confront them in the status quo, that's what stops you from getting the invite. That's the issue. It's not the fact that I talk too reckless or Dr. Ball is too far to the left. It's the fact that we are not caricatures of for these, and we can articulate the positions, we can articulate the plight of our people, and we can articulate some solutions. And that's why they don't want that across their board. They rather have Kanye on there, caping for Nazism, or Dr. Umar on there so they can get a new meme and a viral moment, but they don't want the African struggle and the African liberation effort to be cogently and academically articulated across major platforms. That's the real issue.
Yeah, but on social media though, it's like their hands are almost tied because on the show they can stop you from being on the show. On social media, you can comment and people can like, and then they're gonna feel obligated to respond. But again, I don't think it's gonna be a way in which.
Yeah, but then Talib is suggesting he was trying to say that I was actually a white dude. He saying I know people I don't know. He's the one that pinned my comment to the top. I didn't intend for my comment to get pinned. Normally, when I see stuff like that, I just put raccoon emojis and go about my business. But this whole thing with the Africa, these celebrities going to Africa, they're doing the same shit. You notice during the war on terror, quote unquote, all these black celebrities, Will Smith was all over Dubai, all over the United Arab Emirates. Your boy Busta Rhymes talking about Arab money. And all these black celebrities were posting on social media. E40 was over there in full Saudi Arabian regalia. And they were all going there. You notice that celebrities, it becomes a chic or trending location for
no pun
black
intended,
celebrities. So that kind of bothers me when Africa is now the place to post yourself as a black celebrity. That kind of bothers me. Like, no, go back to Dubai. Go back to the skyscrapers in Dubai. You notice the older black celebrities, Sam, old Christian evangelical nationalist, Denzel Washington. I don't know why y'all keep giving him a pass on his Christian nationalism. Denzel, they posted pictures of themselves in Venice, and
because he played Malcolm X.
Right. Yeah.
You need to stop, Diallo. I'm trying to promote my book.
You come on the Bro Diallo show, and my half dozen listeners.
John, he played John Q too, you know.
Hey, look, the reality, well, part of the reality is, and this is what I always find fascinating and why I want to see how big this BPM project can get, because on the one hand, it's really the remixer's fault. It's you and the audience's fault, because if we had more of an audience, they might feel more compelled to hear us out. But the reality is, and this is the test I would like to see, because I do know at a certain point, no matter how big an audience we develop here at this channel, the reality is the politics is what would eventually be the problem, to the points you've all raised. So it's not even at some level, it's not even up to to your real question, Geechee, I approach. So that's why I'm always defensive when people say it's not what you're saying, it's how you're saying it. And I'm saying, no, it's what I'm saying. Because, you know, I could whisper it, I could sing it in a love song, I could scream it, I could be the day.
They still flying out, they still having Minister Farrakhan on.
Yeah, but I mean, I would have Farrakhan on. So I'm not mad at that. I'm saying
Farrakhan shouldn't. Okay.
Farrakhan come on here.
For what?
He's Farrakhan.
Like seriously, exactly. He's a character. He's a character.
Well, that's you saying that. I'm saying he is an important figure in the history of Black people.
How so?
I mean, well, honestly, like literally this morning I wake up for a text and one of my homies was like, yo, me and some old heads was just talking about Farrakhan, and I said I really want to meet that man, and they said, nah, he's weak, he's nothing. But there's a majority of people who will probably say that they want to meet him and he's this and whatever. So he actually is really, really relevant. Not to say that he's useful.
No, I didn't say he wasn't relevant. I'm not saying Farrakhan ain't relevant. I'm saying Farrakhan ain't got nothing of value to say about nothing. His takes on everything are absurdist and incorrect. And I'm not even going to go about it, his insidious history. But Farrakhan ain't got nothing worth listening to. That he just talks utter nonsense and gibberish.
But I think
when he's not endorsing child molestation and endorsing other inappropriate behaviors, when he's not justifying child molestation.
Wait, in all fairness, wait a minute. When did he do? Wait, in all serious, all jokes aside, hold up. That's pretty. Hold up. Wait, where did he do that?
Elijah did he do what?
Elijah Muhammad?
No, I ain't talking about Elijah Muhammad. No, I am not talking.
What do you
about
mean
Elijah
when you say? Hold up, I'm almost afraid to ask. But I don't want to. That's pretty serious, Diallo. Come on, man.
It is serious.
So what do you mean when you saying that though? I'm not aware of that.
Farrakhan said, and I quote, "The reason fathers mess with their daughters."
Oh yeah.
Didn't I play it for you, Geechee? Didn't I post the video?
Yeah,
I'm not changing a word in this man's mouth. He said the reason that fathers molest their daughters is because the daughters still hold their fathers in great reverence, and the daughters still got tight little bodies, and the mothers let themselves go physically. The mothers start to disrespect, and the men look at their daughters because their daughters look like the woman that they married 20, 30 years ago. And so if women don't want their daughters to be molested, they have to still keep their bodies tight, and they have to hold their husbands in great reverence and joy, and look up to their husbands the way the daughters look up to the husbands.
So I asked for a receipt.
Then you want to
that's
talk
a pretty
about,
heavy receipt.
I got the video.
That's disgusting.
Yeah.
Then I posted the video because when I said Farrakhan said it, I posted the video. People watched the video. He said that verbatim, and people were like, "That's not what he meant."
No, it's the same thing with the when he talked about
Mike Tyson.
Mike Tyson and said, "Yeah, if you come in."
Yeah, that one I saw in the documentary. They played that.
That sounds almost sensible compared to what he said about the reason fathers mess with their daughters. And then I don't know why everybody's clutching pearls, because he is a Muslim. And do we have to look at the doctrine of Muslim in relationship to women and the position and role of women? Everybody loves Islam until some Islamic shit happens. You know, and I don't understand. So yeah, any dude, I don't understand how this cult leader has had such longevity in our community. He ain't said nothing worth listening to, if ever, in the last 30 years.
Yeah,
and he gets up and spews that same old nonsense.
Yeah.
When he's not talking horrendous
nonsense. The standard positions with which I disagree that he shares is one thing. That I admit I never heard anything like that. That was I didn't see that clip.
I'll send you the video clip.
Send me the link, but I'm not saying that I mean I'm doubting you. I'm saying I just did not. That's pretty distirbing. I didn't know that.
I think it's ironic though. Like, so I think people are still living off.
Even my atheist self, I was thinking the same thing, and I gotta agree with Ricky on this one. And there are some super chats I'm gonna get to. I didn't miss them. I just was trying to be polite. Like I wouldn't put Farrakhan on Islam, even if I have a generally low opinion of all religions. I'm not gonna do that.
Gaddafi gave him a sanction. The Saudis gave him a sanction. The Nation of Islam is Islam. And he did start to move the NRI, the very thing he was hating on. The very thing he was hating on, what's that? I can't remember. Wallace. The same thing he was hating on him for doing, he eventually has done. He has
but he was doing it in the context of being against the father, Elijah. Farrakhan is making the moves in the context of being in support of and carrying on the legacy of. So that would be how he would, I think, explain that difference.
All I'm saying is, it's literally called the Nation of Islam.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean, come on now, but that doesn't mean that the general practice or beliefs or it doesn't even mean that the religion itself sanctions the representation of it by all of these people. So I don't,
which can mean black nationalism version of Islam.
It's still Islam.
Or not even that. But all right, come on now, Diallo. Come on, man.
Listen.
Come on, man. Because there are people. For instance, you were just critical of Umar Johnson, who calls himself the Prince of Pan-Africanism. Yes. I, as a Pan-Africanist, should not be condemned or blamed because of his representation of Pan-Africanism.
What am I condemning? Oh, condemning Islam? You're
saying Islam is Farrakhan. That's what
I don't need Farrakhan to condemn Islam. You pick any Muslim, any sect of Islam that you deem legitimate, and I can use their atrocities to condemn Islam.
All right, but you've slightly slid the goalpost here again. You've done that little Diallo slide.
I said everybody loves Islam until some Islamic shit happens. Okay. Everybody loves Christianity until some Christian shit happens. People take all the flowery points of the doctrine, all the flowery, oh, brother, Islam is peace. They take all the flowery shit from the religions and then be like, oh, yes, this is me. And then when the real people who keeps it a buck, who really the fundamentalists, the evangelicals, the true believers come out and adhere to the absurd prehistoric doctrines of these ancient male chauvinist murder cults. And then the good, so-called good ones are that's not real. Until Allah, Yahweh, Jesus Christ come from the clouds and say, oh, this is my shit right here. And so that happens, I'm going to say all of y'all is what y'all claim to be. But Pan-Africanism was made by man and overseen by man, not a divine supernatural power. So it is something we can debate. It is something that we can manipulate, change, expand, contract, and do it because it is a human invention, Pan-Africanism. Islam came from God. Christianity came from God. Judaism came from God. Hinduism came from the God. So when you're claiming your belief system is of a higher power and a higher source, then I think it should be held to a higher standard. But that's me.
All right. So again, aside from the two-step you just did, we don't have to agree on that. That's fine. That's cool. But I did ask for a receipt on the Farrakhan question. I appreciate that one for sure. That was heavy. There is one thing I want us to get to before we our guest gets here. But so I want to just leave that little bit of room for us to address. There is something that we were supposed to address with our audience, but go ahead, Geechee.
No, I was saying like the Farrakhan is still the people that's putting him on the platform for the young people to love him are still thinking or still loving him from his Phil Donahue days. When I guess at that time you have this black man on TV kind of speaking truth to power. But I thought about like Dhoruba was on there as well, like a lot. Just as I don't know if he was on there the same amount of times as Farrakhan, but it's like you have two living people who gave the shit. Obviously, Dhoruba more politically sober, and obviously he's not getting the platforms. He's not gonna get invited to Breakfast Club and stuff like that. So
they only allow for caricatures of black nationalism to reach certain heights of exposure. They don't let we can't even cry about that because the same thing happens in what they call the mainstream amongst white folks. You know, you very rarely saw Howard Zinn or Noam Chomsky or the old scholars, and they prefer to what they call nut pick. They want to bring someone who is a caricature of left-wing causes and left-wing progressivism and ideology. They don't want to bring, you know, proper champions of the cause onto the platform.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I also think that when generally those who are not politically inclined or involved in activist struggle or who are just generally not involved with these kinds of spaces, they reach for a brand when asked a question about some sort of radicalism or politics. So Farrakhan does represent a brand. So it's just like a lot of people may not know the inner workings of a Nike shoe or a Toyota car, but they know the brand. So they're like, okay, you know, most people, I think, even in the black community who positively reference Farrakhan are not doing so because they are intimately aware of his work or his argument or his history. Same thing when they talk about popular academics. They haven't read Dyson's work. They haven't read Cornel West's work. They're just referencing the brand. So I get that. And that's usually how it carries when you see these people engage these commercial media spaces. But there's not a substantive exchange.
Even with the brand.
PR hit.
But even with the brand, notice when Cornell started going hard in the paint against Obama, his invitations dried up right quick. He still has the name, he still has the brand, he still has the struggle afro and the gap in his teeth, very recognizable. But remember, he really started calling Obama an imperialist, calling out Obama's war crime for some reason. And somebody put a battery in his back, and he started going hard in the paint on Obama.
That was Jericho.
He couldn't even secure a spot on Democracy Now! After that. When he was everywhere, he was the resident black scholar, the proper Negro scholar. And I used to even call the dude Coon L. West. I always try to work Coon into people's name when I don't like them. And I had to go back to calling him Cornel West because the dude, you know, he was up there with like the late Ford, you know. He was really just calling out Obama's atrocities, calling out Obama's policy platform and failures, calling out Obama's neoliberalism, and he's gone. So even if you got a brand, if you don't carry the line and you don't play your role, you don't stay in your lane,
pull that rug.
They pulled the rug out from under him.
Yeah, no question. All right, let's take a quick break and then come back, and then we gotta bring something to our audience and get their feedback on something real quick. So don't go anywhere. We'll be right back in just a second.
They say when you wear Black Power Media gear, you can accomplish anything. You play any and every position, coaching to kicking to receiving to running and juking. And, oh my goodness, I see how to get in slow motion. Get off me, And you're going to have a lot of haters coming at you, but what you got to do is you got to shake them off, and get to your goal and accomplish it. And when that's done, it's a beautiful thing. I'm talking about going hard, extra, for that extra point. And when it's done beautifully, you talking about touchdown. Oh, and the crowd goes wild and they're celebrating with you and everything. Man, let's see that again. Nice.
Black Power Media, baby. That's how we do it.
Now go to blackpowermedia.org and get you some of that gear. Empower yourself today.
All right, back again here on what is currently I Mix What I Like here at Black Power Media. But this is something we need to get in some conversation with our audience about, because the three of us have been in discussion about separately bringing Diallo's show individually onto the platform. That's in process. More on that to come in due time. But we've also been talking about officially organizing the three of us and this Friday show into its own separate show, leaving I Mix What I Like for my own thing to sort of float around. But that Friday mornings would be whatever we rename this program and sort of concretize that relationship. The Monday morning show will be is already being concretized as Gorilla Intellectual University with me, Kalanji, and doctors James and Jones. And again, I Mix What I Like will float around and find its home where it can fit in, and that's all good. So what we are interested in is your feedback on what that name, what our rebranding and our renaming of this program Friday mornings might be. The Remix Morning Show will of course stay Tuesday, Wednesdays, and Thursdays, same time, etc. So we had a couple of initial thoughts. that have at least caused me to get some giggles. So one of them pauses, with all due respect to the changing times. I know that's not in vogue. It's not cool to do. And there goes my chair. So one of them was the Big Three, which does exist as a white comedian podcast, but I figured if we took that name, so what? And it would be, we could maybe, do something with the spelling. Another one was I think I've just seen it in the chat too. Didn't I just see? Yep. 3 the Hard Way.
ODB. Dang, I miss ODB, man.
Yeah, I do too, actually. Although his song came on in the car the other day, one of his tracks came on in the car with my daughters, and I had to turn it off. So but I do miss him. I had to admit, I was like, I can't sit in here and listen to this with them. Yeah. But I miss, yeah. So the Nuance Show.
I was just literally thinking about 3-4L, right? 3-4 left.
3-4L, 3-man band.
Yeah, 3-4L.
3 students.
3 Stooges.
Hateration Radio. Yeah. Anyway, so definitely just if we don't get if we 3 times dope. That is a great Al Unique.
He's a lyricist, so him and Michael P should probably do. They should do an intro or something. Yeah.
And if we get a new intro,
Diallo, you're on mute again. But yeah,
you on mute. You on mute?
I'm just over here rapping. I said definitely the best thing that's ever happened.
That's funny. That's funny. Why that would be funny. We gonna troll. We gonna troll old girl. Stop it.
Hey,
3 times petty. I like that too. But 3 times dope.
How about killing mics?
Oh, that's funny. That's funny.
Killing mics.
You a troll, Geechee. You a troll. Geechee is a troll. Geechee and the other 2 brothers who talk too much.
Ouch. Ow. Oh.
Shirley went hard. How do they say? Shirley chose violence. But how would you turn that? Hold on. Yeah, I know. How do we? GTOTB WTTM.
Hey, you know what? Somebody be saying Ball and G, and that be sounding dope, but we got to pull in Diallo in that. Ball and G, y'all, my bad. Y'all old fellas. Y'all don't know about rap. But Ball and G.
And MJG.
My bad, Diallo.
Man,
Diallo be knowing the rap.
I know. Wait, hold up. I know. Of course, I know 8Ball and MJ. I just don't listen to them.
Yeah, I don't listen to it either.
I know who they are.
Southern rap lowered the IQ of
Diallo in the morning show. so me and Geechee are the pits now.
Damn.
We if anybody saw the movie Almost Famous, we the brothers that got blurred out in the on the album cover on the T-shirt. That's messed up.
Diallo say ain't nobody come to see y'all balling, G.
Concerning violence. That was a pretty dope documentary, if I remember correctly. Did I like it or did I hate it? I think I liked it. Didn't I like it? Anyway.
I think it was all right. It was decent.
Triple Threat. 3 Left Mafia. Oh.
Shout out.
Who's that? That's not Kamal.
Rest in peace to Gangsta Boo.
Yeah.
Rest in peace to Gangsta Boo.
Where them dollars at? Dang.
Yo, 3 Left Mafia and 3 times dope.
3 times dope.
That's what that's the curmudgeons. I like that.
Well, listen, all we need to do, the rappers who do the intro, they need to put my bar in there, Killing Mics. For real. Because I be dropping bars sometimes.
And then you could drop mine, could be balling. That was my slogan when I was running for president. Balling in 08.
Sorry. I have to. Somebody caught me saying something I shouldn't have said, and I apologize.
What you said?
I said Southern hip hop. I said Southern rap lowered the IQ of hip hop, and a Southern rapper just texted me and said I was being disrespectful. I apologize for that. I didn't mean it the way it came out.
Hey, one of my favorite rappers is from the South.
Who? Andre 3000?
Nah, man, Skip Coon.
Oh,
that's who
texted him. I thought.
Oh, is that who texted him?
Yeah. That's who texted me. He said, "Stop being disrespectful."
I thought he was from DC. Where is he from?
Mississippi.
Jackson.
So you know.
Okay.
Southern rap did not lower the IQ of hip hop, but certain
I don't know.
Yeah, let me say, I say that. Yeah, sometimes I say reckless things.
I mean,
I would only say the commercial, the promoted commercial form has I would at least say has not raised the IQ. I admit I'm an East Coast bias on that. I admit that.
I mean, stanky leg. Do the stanky leg.
I mean, them cats don't count, and that's not the. That's like.
Where they from?
Yeah. Well, let's not act like chicken noodle soup ain't from the north.
Hold on, let me write this down.
That's literally a double Dutch song. That's a double Dutch song. Come on now.
And let's not talk about Dipset and them commercial bubblegum beats that they had. Like, don't do that.
Chopped and screwed. And then y'all got everybody drinking syrup. You know, New York had us on 40s and a blunt. You know,
Dad, Diallo and friends. So we really the Pips.
Yeah, man. We just
the background singers just in the back.
Singing in the background.
Do what?
No, we're gonna have to wear one of them little flashy suits.
That's messed up. You David Ruffin?
Ain't nobody coming to see you, Dr. Paul. Oh wait, they said Atlanta's not.
Atlanta's not the what?
Skip said Atlanta's not the South. So we
wait, what?
Yikes!
Atlanta's not the South. Atlanta is not Atlanta.
First they say Virginia. First they say Virginia the South. Then they say Baltimore still the South, and now Atlanta not the South.
Anywhere south of the Canadian border is South.
That actually isn't bad. I know the Diallo name must be in the title.
JDG.
Folks would be upset by this. It's not featured enough.
JDG?
The Diallo and the JG show. That's probably how we should redo it.
Don't do it, because then I am the type to get strung out and get up full of myself, and I prefer to stay
David
humble.
Ruffin. I said it right. I said it right.
There's no word with them 3 letters.
Liberation
DJ.
Squad Pod. Yes, Liberation Squad Pod.
Community movement coming with all the names. They look like they do this.
So I'm also open to please send any of us, whoever you prefer to be in touch with, any logo suggestions and your theme song. We should have a theme song contest.
Yeah. I got about 2-3 artists that I think can get it done.
I got mine.
I would even put a request into BPM for like a can we have like a financial prize, like a small, it wouldn't be much, but a small like Free World TV. I like that too,
I
actually.
like that, Manny.
Oh, wait, the troll. Enoch wins the troll of the day. Mama's Bowberry biscuits.
Bowberry.
Good job. Good job.
Mama biscuits.
Man, shout out to Mama's Biscuits. Y'all gonna put some respect.
Bro, you ain't send me one link and you ain't I hear one
Mama's
song yet.
Mama's Biscuits was my college funk band. I was I played drums in a funk band called Mama's Biscuits, and we took the name from a line on the Muddy Waters Redman album where Method Man says the line better than your mama's biscuits. I forgot the rest of the verse, but I heard that and I was like, that's going to be the name of our band. And that was the name of our band. So shout out to the legendary, the best funk band in Western Maryland from 1997 to 1999.
And we ain't see one receipt yet. He ain't give us no old videos.
If you don't know, you don't know.
High glitter boots.
Yeah, man.
Oh, that would have been hilarious.
He probably up there making beats on Fruity Loops and stuff, man.
All right. Anyway, real quick, before our guest gets here, shout out to the super chats dealing with the real. Peace and happy Friday to all. Last night I checked out a live stream on Happy Film with Tyrene Wright on Booker T. Washington. It was very informative and gave me even more respect for Booker T. Washington. Hopefully BPM will have her on soon. All right, I don't know anything about this. And if you can convince me, Booker T, no, I'm just playing. That would be worth it. If you, that's a hell of a feat. But no, I mean, I definitely appreciate that. I want to check it out. Thank you, Steph Fife. I like that. Last night, Chairman O'Malley announced their indictment might come down today, January 6th. Not a coincidence. Urgent amplification necessary. Oh, yeah, that would be interesting timing, right? So we'll definitely keep our eyes open for that. Thank you for the heads up in the super chat. And I guess Ricky Ryan is a superstar. She don't have to pay to get recognized. But yes, thank you for the reminder that I did try to make that point in the MOBP too, how the use of actors in the world. So thank you, and thank you for actually reading the work. I appreciate that. It's wild how that is how many people want to say something and don't want to at least do that.
Too much to ask.
It's just my favorite was old boy was trying to debate me about the book and then sent me an email asking to get a copy of the book. And I was like, nah, you got Mike. Thank you, Leah, for the super chat. Microphone lefts or our mics sound nice. Ooh.
Okay,
I'm gonna write those down too. Hold on.
The B girl from DC.
Ooh, that is microphone. Hold on, let me make sure I get this right. Microphone lefts, and then our mics sound nice. I like that. I like that. Oh, we got some choices. We got some decisions to make. And thank you for the super chat as well. Yeah, Leah's suggestions are dope. Maybe that should be the title of the podcast. Leah's suggestions are dope. Anyway, so we'll definitely keep moving on that. Thank you all very much, and definitely continue to send in suggestions. I don't know when we'll have to make this decision. Oh wow, thank you, McYeagermeister, for the. But this is what I'm saying, and this is what the suggestion is. That's why we got to watch this new documentary to get a better appreciation.
Have y'all engaged?
How y'all gonna say that? As is working hard and conducting ourselves in dignified manner, want us the respect of our oppressors and full inclusion into his systems.
Have y'all engaged with the happy people? Have y'all
3-piece spices? Oh shit.
3-piece spice.
I'm writing that one down too.
But have y'all interacted with the happy group yet?
I haven't.
No, Diallo.
No, who that is?
They got a big YouTube I only know one person over there, and I think she's pretty new to the set. But the Happy Films, what they were talking about.
It sounds familiar. I think there's been some somewhere, but
I
not
can't.
much.
Matter of fact, I think the light skinned brother there, I think his last name is Happy or something like that. But
All right. Well, listen. Let's pause, pun intended on that, and come back in just a second here with our very special guest to talk about. Let's get into the seriousness of the history of the relationship between fascism, austerity, and fascism, and get some. Let's bring some accuracy to that discussion. Don't go anywhere. Back in a quick second.
I mix what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like.
All right, welcome back, everybody. Good morning once again. Welcome back to I Mix What I Like here at BPM, and we're joined this morning by our very special guest, Dr. Clara Mattei, who, among many other things, is an assistant professor in the economics department of the New School for Social Research and was a 2018-2019 member of the School of Social Sciences at the Institute for Advanced Studies. Her research contributes to the history of capitalism, exploring the critical relationship between economic ideas and technocratic policy making. I'll make sure to put the link to her full bio in the show description. But want to welcome her now to the show to talk specifically about, at least starting with her latest publication, which called The Capital Order. So let's get into it. Dr. Mattei, welcome to the program. Good morning. Thank you for joining us. Greetings.
Good morning. Thank you so much for having me. I hope the connection is good. In case, just let me know. I try to fix it.
No,
yeah,
right on.
I'm here. I published this book, The Capital Order. It's out since November, and it's a book that tries to really look critically at what happened 100 years ago to understand what's going on today in most countries in the world, and especially in the United States, in terms of economic policies that suppress, subjugate, and discipline the majority of us in favor of the wealthy few.
And by the way, real quick, so that means you're up there with my guy Derek Hamilton, then, correct? Isn't that right?
Yeah, he's a colleague of mine at the New School.
Yeah, right on. That's my guy. Shout out to Dr. Hamilton. Okay, so let's talk about it. Unfortunately, I've only been able to read the introduction to the book, so I have a lot more to go. But the introduction by itself is pretty fascinating. So you've sort of given a little bit of an overview in terms of the broad scope of what your work the book is intending to do. But let's start with the basics. I mean, we do often hear in this country and obviously around the world that austerity is either an issue or we're encouraged to believe it's necessary. But you really do recalibrate how we should interpret and engage arguments or presentations or claims about austerity. So let's start with, if you would, tell us what austerity is and how you track the history of it and what it's really designed to do.
Thanks. Yeah, it's interesting because austerity is everywhere in our lives. It shapes the lives of the majority of working people in this world, but the word itself is often not used, or if used in a way apolitically and often inappropriately. So first of all, it's important to understand what austerity is. And austerity is not just about cutting the budget in general. It's a trinity of policies as I describe them. So first of all, it's fiscal austerity, meaning cuts in the social sector. So cuts in welfare benefits. So school, public housing, education, healthcare, unemployment benefits, and so forth. And what it is about shifting the resources from the majority of working people, for example, in the United States, to the very few, to the 1%. How? Well, by saying, well, it's necessary that we pay back the debt. What is paying back the debt all about? It's about cutting, again, these social resources in favor of paying back the debt or the interest on the debt, which goes directly in the pockets of the financial institutions, of the few who are actually the creditors in this society. So it's not about cutting the budget in general, it's about cutting social spending. This is the first point, because if the United States right now is increasing its military expenditures to rearm NATO and to fight the war in Ukraine and other wars that are not even discussed about anymore, it's important to note that this doesn't mean that there's no cuts in structural defunding of the social sector. Then it's about monetary austerity, which goes hand in hand with fiscal austerity. And monetary austerity is all about increases in the interest rates, which is exactly what we're seeing right now. What do increases in interest rate do? Well, the Fed has been increasing the interest rates now for 6 months at least. This is causing not only mortgages to be more expensive and in general livelihoods of people to be more expensive, given that we all often live on credit in the United States if we're working class, but it's also about causing greater unemployment. So the fact that increases in interest rates are basically laying off people as a result, because it creates a recession, and this recession is felt on the shoulders once more of the majority of us who are dependent on selling one's labor power in return for a wage. And what austerity does is discipline people to accept their condition as low-paid wage workers. Why? Well, because in a moment like this one, in which there's a lot of spontaneous rebellion against going back to work in miserable conditions. We have a huge anti-work campaign, right? We have the fact that there's great resignation in the United States. This spontaneous rebellion against our condition of wage workers goes hand in hand with more organized militancy in the forms of a lot of strikes in this moment, right? There's hundreds of strikes all around the country in the United States, especially also of those workers that are actually in more precarious conditions. They're organizing and fighting for better conditions. And guess what? If the Fed increases the interest rates, the result is going to be to increase the precariousness of people, increase the unemployment rate. And this immediately brings to the fore the fact that we just have to, in a way, silence our demands and get back into it and get back into getting exploited at higher levels. So this is monetary austerity. And then there's industrial austerity, which is all about constant privatization. So again, increasing market dependence, constant privatization, attacks on unions, deregulation of labor, and this type of policies. So this is the trinity of austerity. And in this, I was actually forgetting one important component of fiscal austerity, which is, of course, regressive taxation. The fact that the state gets money, the money the state has through taxes doesn't come from the rich, actually, but comes from, once more, from the majority. So in the United States right now, once the higher brackets are reduced, corporate taxes are cut, while consumption taxes constantly go up, we are in a historical moment in which the 400 richest families pay an overall tax rate which is lower than the other American families. So that is pretty striking. The fact that actually the state is having us pay, and it's not having us pay at all proportionally to our income, but actually the poorest pay more, and the money does not go to social spending, but goes to purposes that actually favor the wealthy few.
So I want to, again, having only read the introduction, I selfishly started to interpret what I was reading through the tiny lens of my own narrow world of arguments and work, which often center around the relationship of political power versus economic power. Yeah. So for instance, in this country, we hear all the time, specifically when we're talking about Black people, but any oppressed or suffering group is encouraged to get your money right, get your financial literacy right, start a small business, and then you can engage political power, and then you can move, because that's how everybody else has done it. But when I even read just your introduction, I'm reading it very differently. And I'm reading you saying, no, the elite used political power and policy making to create a false concept of the economy, how it works, specifically so that they could, as you say, quote, attack unions, so that they could weaken the political power of working people, so that they could. So in other words, that the despite claims about capitalism being free enterprise and individual, it is a very managed economy, just managed through the political power of a ruling elite, as opposed to some sort of democratic or hardworking or enterprising group of deserving business people, whatever.
Definitely. Actually, I really like what you said at the very beginning, the fact that we're constantly pressured to get our balanced budgets together, like be prudent. And actually, if we don't make it to the top, then it's all kind of our fault. And we can only blame ourselves if we don't make it to earn more money or to become part of the capitalist class. Actually, this type of rhetoric is deeply imbued of the austerity values that experts have been actually diffusing at all levels of society for 100 years now. So we've all internalized the austerity logic to the point, again, that if we're suffering financially, if we're suffering politically, if we are amongst the discriminated groups, we feel that actually it's mostly our fault. That ultimately maybe we didn't work hard enough, and we aren't virtuous enough or rational enough economically. Well, all of this is not something that is neutral. It's actually deep morality that is imbued in the economic models that today dominate society. So economic experts are not unbiased hard scientists. By the way, not even the hard scientists are unbiased, but especially not social scientists like economic experts. They actually have assumptions in their very economic theory that are profoundly classist, profoundly about, again, justifying the fact that the only rational economic policy is austerity because it should shift resources from the many to the few and increase our precariousness in favor of greater expectations for profit of the very, very few. So this is very important, that economists play an enormously political role. And this is something that the layman doesn't usually focus on, because we once more have internalized the idea that we shouldn't care about economic decisions because economic decisions are stuff for experts. There's stuff that ultimately we don't know anything about, we are not knowledgeable enough about, so just leave it to those who supposedly should do the good for all of us. But guess what? These experts don't do the good for all of us, but actually do the interest of the very few they're aiming to protect. And again, the fact is that these experts are trying to protect, the title of my book, the capital order. So it's not even that they're not even playing the interest of, single individuals. They're trying to protect a system that is based on the structural exploitation of the many. So a system in which, if the majority does not accept to go work for a low wage and in shitty conditions, then there is no economic growth. And so economists who are meant to protect capitalism are there to provide the best possible environment, not for humans to thrive, but for capitalism to thrive. And capitalism and democracy are really not compatible. And this is what the capital order shows, the thesis shows, is that given that capitalism requires austerity to survive, austerity is the most anti-democratic, authoritarian set of public policies, but they're not a mistake. They're necessary for capitalism. So either we really try to confront ourselves in thinking, well, you know what, we should actually participate in economic decisions and make these economic decisions change for a different set of people, or we're going to be stuck in a world in which economic experts pretend they're all technical and neutral and apolitical, while they're wielding the worst political weapons are all, which are ideology and economic ideas that justify certain policies that are ultimately extractive and that reduce us into poverty and into accepting the fact that we can't get to the end of the month without really struggling and really living a very miserable life. And as Americans, we know It's enough to walk anywhere in the city that the economic violence is so obvious in our face, how much people suffer and how much especially minorities suffer because of austerity, that it's something that by now I think it's really the moment in which we need to open our eyes. And the purpose of the capital order is to help gain some tools that can be critical enough to challenge the expertise of economists as something that once more goes against the interest of the majority.
So we could either struggle for some political power, or Diallo, maybe we could just invest in some Bitcoin and listen to our favorite rapper.
Yeah. Well, you know, in terms of austerity, we would it be correct, because a lot of times I refer to these conditions or these policies as self-inflicted wounds, because the white majority in the United States and Western Europe did vote for these policies and embrace these policies and to champion these policies, whether it's the Reagan Revolution or the rise of Margaret Thatcher. It's not, I mean, I would it be inappropriate? Would it not be inappropriate to paint this as something that the white elite imposed on the white majority, as opposed to something that the white majority essentially voted and asked for a mandate to bring austerity in the 80s? And literally just hollowed out their own social safety net. If you look at voting trends of the white majority versus Black, Hispanic, and other non-majority votings, where whites to this day have consistently voted for austerity and austerity party and austerity politicians. So this,
and is this your consensus coercion discussion?
Right. So that's really interesting, and it's very important to keep in mind that austerity is successful, quote unquote, because it has us really internalize its values to the point that common folks and white folks go off and vote for governments who are all about, you know, tightening the belt and paying back the debt. So in a way, this is the power of ideology, and the whole point here is that the ideology of the ruling few is so powerful that it's masked and concealed as actually something that goes in the favor of everyone, right? So I agree with you, but I also think that this, once more, it's not then the fault of the voter, though necessarily, but it's about looking at the effort here in the capital order is to look at the origins of how this unilateral class war is played out, and how actually austerity then becomes so successful that actually people go vote against their own interests. Because I agree with you that, of course, sorry, this is my baby. Sorry, 1 second only. I give it to the mother. Sorry.
No, it's all right. It's no problem. No problem.
But you know, it's just, I mean, when it comes to working class, I think race has to well, maybe I should wait for her to come back. But you know, when we talk about the elites and the working class, every time Black people have locked arms with the white working class, we get stabbed in the back, the chest, and the forehead. So I think it runs a little deeper than that. I don't think it's just.
But as I hear Professor Mattei, and I think you're still muted on your end. But and this is where if you could, at least in the introduction, she introduces her an approach where you describe consensus versus coercion.
Yeah.
And so to Diallo's point, and I agree, whenever Black people start to unify, the white working class tends to vote along its own racial interests as opposed to its class interests. But you describe a process by which they're encouraged to do that.
Yeah, no, definitely. So this is the whole point, right? So whenever there's actually alternatives to our economic system emerging, so think about, like, I know, the powerful group of the Black Panthers, that was a radically anti-austerity group, right? Because they were actually organizing, they were taking on the organization of distribution of resources on their own hand, right? So this self-management of resources is exactly what austerity as this powerful weapon helps to kill. So what happens here is that, of course, there's all the nuances and there's all the distinction, the very important distinctions amongst the different groups of the working classes that, of course, also about, different race and gender and so forth. But I think it's also important to study the enemy. So here the point is like to look at actually how the powerful, who yes are definitely white, the white powerful have what instruments they have used to also segment and divide and put various workers against one another in a way that is to their benefit. So what I do is actually look at 100 years back. I look at, my book is focused on Europe in the 1920s, on Britain and Italy. And what you see here and is that in a moment in which workers, and there of course we're talking about primarily about a white population at that time in Europe in those years, workers were fighting for an alternative to capitalism. The revolutionary biennium, 1919-1920, not only was inspired by what was going on in Russia with the Soviets, but it was actually all about self-management of production and distribution. So we had a huge growth of workers' councils in Italy, in Britain, who were really demanding production for use rather than profit, and the centrality of the producer and the abolition of classes, right? So were actually very radical claims that went also against the capitalist state that the state was seeing as an element in the exploitation profits and in the marginalization of the losers in society. So it's in this moment of flourishing of alternatives. And the reason why I focus on Europe is not because austerity was not being imposed everywhere else in the globe, right? The Empire, Britain was imposing austerity on its colonies. And this was used, of course, as a measure of class and racial oppression. But the point is interesting is to see how in moments in which there are alternatives emerging, and austerity is invented as a reaction to depress and repress and foreclose any of these alternatives, right? So I would say in this sense, my work works through a class analysis lens for sure. So I'm unfortunately looking in the 1920s, I don't have the nuances to look at actually what happens at the level of the different segments of the working classes, for example, in the United States today. But here the focus is actually on how does capitalism protect itself? And it protects itself through austerity that unilaterally basically kills all these alternatives that come from working people and come from different groups. You know what I mean? So what you say, I don't think is in any way not compatible with this type of analysis. This type of analysis is trying to give like a macro picture of how economic policies are an instrument of class war. And of course, this increases the racial discrimination and increases also the conflicts amongst different working groups that, of course, then suppress one another as well.
Yeah, I just showed. I just wanted to show that a little bit of how you approach the topic of austerity and how you clearly are defining and describing it. So as you said here, in this way, austerity must be understood for what it is and remains: an anti-democratic reaction to threats of bottom-up social change, which I think is very important, because it's never, well, rarely discussed or described in that context. But you also say that this, if I again understand you correctly, you're saying that austerity is a precursor, a groundwork laying part of the process of leading society to fascism. Is that what you're saying?
So this is, yes, in a way. Let me first, going back to the point that we were making before, I'm not trying to, the whole point here is to say austerity is not just a problem of neoliberalism, right? So there's a lot of focus on the fact that austerity is all about neoliberalism, that the problem really started only in the 80s, as you for example, were pointing out. The idea here is to say, no, austerity has a much longer history, and it dates back really to when advanced capitalism is established. It has at least 100 years of age, and it really serves to protect capital as this basic social relation, right? So it's in the DNA of capitalism as such. And this gives you a very, I think radicals land, because you think, well, it's not just that neoliberalism is the problem and we can just go back to like a humane form of capitalism that supposedly is like virtuous enough to like, you know, be good for the people. Actually, what I'm trying to say is that austerity is deeply necessary to protect this capital. Capital as wealth needs capital as a social relation by which the majority is disciplined into accepting their condition as precarious wage workers. So this is the first thing, is like how long of a history austerity has. And this, I think, helps people stop thinking that we should just attack neoliberalism. No, we should really realize that austerity is a problem of capitalism in general. And so we need to really try to think of alternatives that go beyond capitalism as such. And in its origins, I look at the 1920s, so exactly 100 years ago, because it was in those years that the first fascist regime, of Benito Mussolini, which ruled for 20 years from 1922 to 1945, when it was defeated with the resistance, the civilian resistance, of which actually my great grandpa, whose the book is dedicated to, fought in the resistance against the fascist occupation and actually committed suicide in jail in order to fight back against the dictatorship. Well, this dictatorship wielded austerity in order to fortify itself. So here, the other radical message is to say, austerity shows how liberalism and fascism, who we usually understand as very far apart as worldviews, actually unite in protecting capital. So the reason why fascism was so successful in a way establishing itself for such a long-lasting dictatorship is because it was able to do austerity well and gain the applause of the whole liberal elite, the whole international financial establishment in Italy, in Britain, in the United States at the time. And this applause for austere authoritarian governments is not only the case for Mussolini and fascism in Italy, but is what we see recurring throughout the 20th and 21st century. So you can even just think about the case of Pinochet in Chile, that we usually understand as one of the precursors of neoliberalism and austerity. Pinochet in Chile had the support of someone like Milton Friedman and of the whole economic elite saying, look at this guy, finally we have someone who's economically rational enough. So my point here is to say that the case of Chile is, again, not an exception. It follows a trend that went way back all the way to 1922, when Mussolini used austerity in order to justify and fortify its regime. And he was very good at doing it because he could impose austerity also by jailing, torturing, and killing political opponents.
So hold on, Diallo, real quick, because Professor Mattei, you mentioned something that, and shout out to Josh and Aaliyah who arranged and put this together and provided a question here for us to ask that you touched on in passing, and we'd like you to elaborate on. When you discuss capital as a social relationship of production, what does that mean? Could you elaborate on that?
Yeah, so this is an intuition that is definitely not my own, but it goes all the way back to anyone who reads Marx's Capital, is the idea that capital, so our economic system has the purpose of increasing capital accumulation, right? So investing money to make more money. This is kind of in the DNA of how our economic system works. It doesn't matter what you invest in. The point here is to accumulate more money with respect to the money you started off with. And this is the logic that is embodied in all businesses since the origins of capitalism, which dates around 300 years ago, okay? So this money that is accumulated to make more money, which is what we call economic growth, right? The production of economic wealth, our material wealth, necessitates as the source of this wealth the fact that there are the large majority of people who work for a value that is greater than the one they are being paid for, right? This is the concept of exploitation that classical political economy understands, not in moral terms, but in very precise historical analytical terms, to say all this value we see in the form of money doesn't come, as economists have us think, from the virtuosity of the saver investors who are good enough to sacrifice and save, right? This is actually in the models that dominate us today. But it comes out of the fact that the large majority just doesn't get paid for the value it produces, right? So here it is that wage work is the pillar of capitalism, together with private property of the means of production, which creates this enormous class divide that then, of course, creates further layers of discrimination and exploitation according to metrics that are also, of course, about race, about gender, and the intersection between them. And we know how complex it is. But we need to keep in mind that there is a fundamental class analysis that makes it such that capitalism can only function if the few reap the benefits from the wage work of the many. This is capital as a social relation. The fact that the majority of us, in order to make a living, in order to eat, sleep, go to school, actually get cured, right, pay the medical bills, we are forced to go and work for a wage. Why? Because we all depend on this freaking market. The market dominates us. And this is what austerity does. It increases our market dependence by privatizing, by cutting social services, by increasing the unemployment rate. It makes us all more precarious and thus more market dependent, and thus silences any opposition, any social struggle for change. So it's this capital as the social relation by which we have accepted to be wage workers is something that is not natural. And economists at the top know this very well. So austerity is all about protecting capital as this fundamental social relation. And once more, we are in a historical moment in which, through inflation also, which is triggering the breakdown of the idea that our system is so great and efficient, people are pissed off about their conditions, right? And again, we see this in the fact that people just don't want to go back to work for such low wages and in such precarious, deregulated conditions, right? So it's in these moments in which people are questioning capital as the social relation that austerity is more essential than ever. And this is why in the United States it has come back with a vengeance now, starting from at least March. We saw in a moment in which workers were actually increasing their nominal wages, they are now reverting back to a situation in which unemployment will kill the few increases in wages they have earned.
So earlier you mentioned something about I don't know if you talked about alternative and speaking to the positive lights of democracy, but I wonder, in your experience in maybe France, the UK, and in the US, you know, if austerity is this common thing, or if people believe in the idea of capitalism, I wonder how you experience people here, people in the two different countries, UK or France, as being politically sophisticated. Like, do you find economists with class analysis, people that you engage with more with class analysis, or is it like, I guess I just want to hear the difference between your experience in these countries and dealing with people.
So it's interesting because clearly there is a huge gap between what people feel and experience as economic violence and what the elite in academia talk about, right? And this is, of course, a gap that comes out of like a complete like incapacity of sharing lived experiences. The lived experience that the people experience at the bottom of society, which are the large majority, have nothing to do with the privileges of those who are actually diffusing economic ideas, right? So I think this is really interesting because actually these supposed sophisticated economic models that people learn at school, right? Any kid, if he makes it or she makes it to college, what they will learn is micro, macro on a textbook, thinking that this is kind of, you know, these are the laws of economics. Let's just study them because they look so disembodied in this textbook, right? Something that is kind of like there and the only theory possible. Actually, this theory has zero explanatory power because the people who came up with these theories historically are privileged white groups, if we want to add, that have no contact with the reality of how people, the majority, actually lives, right? So this is why there's a huge problem with theory that has no explanatory power, but this doesn't really matter because actually theory doesn't need to have great explanatory power. It needs to do exactly the opposite. It needs to hide what really happens so that people that actually make it to go to school supposedly should get an education, but this education is not critical at all, right? People that actually go to college are usually more indoctrinated than people who don't make it to college. And this is really the problem, that economics serves to indoctrinate people that maybe would have more radical slants, but then they go to school, they think, oh, this is the economic law, this is a natural fact. They don't hear even the word capitalism in college. If you take an econ course, is not even mentioned. The fact that we are market dependent and wage workers are the majority of people isn't mentioned, right? The type of technical jargon completely depoliticizes the economic system. So you only speak about supply and demand in this very abstract way so that you lose consciousness of the fact that, no, we're not in an economy in general. We're in a capitalist economy that was born 300 years ago. It's only really very young compared to how people have lived on the planet. Capitalism is only 0.1% of the time the Homo sapiens has been on Earth. Have people lived under capitalism, okay? So it's a very young economic system that has an origin and potentially has an end. And it's a system in which injustices, discrimination, economic violence is the norm, is not the exception. It's just how the system works in order to increase economic growth. So this is really interesting because people who are not educated in economics really understand the economics dynamics much better. And people who hold the wisdom of the science are there not to explain, but to hide, and most of all, to justify austerity, which is all about protecting capital by constantly shifting resources from the majority to the minority. And this, I think, is the real thing, is the fact that we're in a moment in which the system is so deeply in crisis, in which anyone who walks out of their own home realizes, or in their own home realizes, how profoundly unjust it is, right? And we're even lucky because we live in the United States. Of course, there's hundreds. Now I'm in Italy because I'm actually originally from Italy. There's hundreds of people dying in the Mediterranean every single day because they're trying to cross over to Europe because of what's going on in everywhere else in the world. People risking their lives on a boat. And now we even have an Italian government who decided to outlaw the work of the actually NGOs who go and rescue these people, right? So there's even, right? So the level of violence, also political, has gone to extremes. And I think it's in these moments in which potentially there is a breakthrough in which people can say, no, let's reappropriate economic knowledge. And this is exactly what Gramsci did. And this is what I study in the Capital Order, is the fact in the 1919, Gramsci, with his movement of the councils, was all about reappropriating economic knowledge for the people, saying, listen, there is a different way in which we can understand economics. We can understand how actually the system structurally produces injustices, and thus we can claim agency and economic decision making should go back to us. Austerity, though, is the weapon that experts say, no, we're sorry. You guys have nothing to do with economic decisions. Leave it to us. The fact that now we're used to the fact that the Fed is an independent central bank and experts at the Fed are not even elected. They do what they want. They're imposing sacrifice, as they themselves say it, without anyone institutionally can't say anything because they keep economic decisions in their own hands. This is not, again, a natural fact. This is not something we should just accept. This is the outcome of hundreds of years of austerity in which the experts were able to keep the economic power in their own hands. And this is what we should rebel against, is to actually, I think common sense and the injustice we feel on our skin is something that has a lot of legitimacy and should not be silenced by some abstract economic model that is trying to tell us that actually that's not true, and all we need to do is like put more work and right, be just more rational, and then we'll be fine.
Right on. Thank you. Diallo, you're muted. My bad. Hold on. I had muted you just to kill some of the background noise. Sorry. Go ahead, Diallo.
In terms of austerity being the path to fascism, the majority of the world is under much more intensive austerity than Western Europe and the United States and the predominantly white countries. Yes. But they haven't gone to fascism. Haiti, in particular, you look at some place like Haiti that's been under austerity and hyper-economic exploitation for over a century, and it's not a fascist state, and the people do not hold to fascist ideology. So as far as non-white people and austerity being a path to fascism, how is that reconciled? And also, do you speak to white racist aggression in times of a strong welfare state, in times of economic stability and economic growth, as if, white folks just get racist when, their pockets start to be, taxed, or, there's hyper white aggression and imperialist aggression. And like you said, capitalism is only 3 years old, and the welfare state is less than half that old. So we've seen, a real entrenched history of white aggression and white racist violence, fascist violence that is outside and separate from, or predates, or during times of economic growth outside of austerity.
Yep. No, I agree with all you said. So definitely the case. So first of all, to your point about how there's austerity outside of fascism, for sure. And I think what the Capital Order is a history book which looks at a specific historical study, which can help us also, I think, see some commonalities with other situations that, of course, would need then a study of their own. But I think, for example, something that the book makes clear is that the dichotomy between parliamentary democracies and dictatorships should kind of be reconsidered in the nuances and in the similarities, right? So absolutely, the point is that actually the economic coercion and violence of austerity is not something that you see only in a fascist state like Italy in the 1920s, but you were already really seeing in Britain in the 1920s. And what you see here is that there is this form of economic violence that liberals themselves, in order to protect the capital order, are very keen about. So, of course, this is magnified in situation in which the economic dependency of the south of the world has these countries have to in a way accept even greater austerity, right? So my work is a class analysis within the West, right? So I look at Britain and Italy, which are two countries in the hub of the West in the early 20th century, right? But the point here is that this type of dynamics are exacerbated and exasperated in situations in which you're not looking at the West and you're looking also at the rest of the world. The reason why I look at the West in Britain and Italy is because it was there that economic rights were being achieved by the majority. People had gained the right to vote, for example, right? So after the Great War, which is the beginning of my story, with the Great War, people having fought in the trenches, this meant that people were granted political rights that were unprecedented. So while capitalism before the 1920s was structurally anti-democratic, it was a moment in which people were demanding greater say in economic decisions. And it's there that it's interesting to see austerity as a form of reaction to these demands for greater economic democracy. So that's why I look at these countries, because it's the origins of a class struggle that happens within the rich empires, right? Britain, the empire par excellence. This does not mean that Britain was not imposing austerity everywhere else. It doesn't mean like that today, actually, more than ever. Haiti, you can look at also Puerto Rico, any country that you can name it in the rest of the world is actually undertaking harsh austerity to in order to actually get the structural financial aid of the IMF. Of course, we know this, right? So the fact that austerity is conditional, financial aid is conditional upon austerity. And this is actually something that any government from fascist to liberal has to accept in order if one wants to remain within the capitalist economic system. So definitely the point here is that austerity is not just a matter of fascism, but what I show is that fascism and authoritarianism works best with austerity. And this helps us also stop making such a hard distinction between democracies, parliamentary democracies, and fascism, because actually certain dynamics that happen within parliamentary democracies are extremely similar to what was happening under fascism. We can just imagine the fact that we know very well that right now, I mean, any political opposition is really censored and defeated in supposed democratic context as well, right? So we should rethink what democracy means in the rest of the world as well. So this is kind of the point. And then to your other point about welfarism and capitalism, absolutely. The point of this book is to say that the solution is not to try to go back to a supposedly better world in the 70s or 60s in which capitalism was delivering economic growth and supposed greater welfare measures. Because, and this is going to be the project of my next book, it is the fact that this idealized golden age of capitalism, in which, by the way, we know very well how this idealized golden age of capitalism was only really benefiting the white working elite and not the rest. This idealized age was an age of structural violence as well, as you pointed out, at all levels, from the level of what the state was doing to the level of what different sections of society were doing. So here the idea is not to say, oh, austerity is the problem, let's revert back to a better form of capitalism, because the idea here is actually that once we see that austerity is integral to capitalism in all its phases, then it's clear that capitalism does not deliver any form of social justice or redistributive or non-fascist ideologies ever. So I completely agree with your points. And I think actually this book helps more lucidly realize that we should stop having in our mind the idea that we are ultimately like in a situation that is more advanced politically and economically than other moments in history, because it's not the case.
So
Right
there's
on.
this,
No, go ahead.
real quick. So there's this, we are our study group are reading decolonial Marxism, and there's always been this idea of associating Marx with, white people analysis, white people stuff. How do you engage Marx, and how do you explain it to maybe your students, especially I guess in this economic setting? And then how do you feel it relate to people that are not white working class or whatever?
Can you still hear me? Yeah. Okay,
Yes,
good.
yeah.
Thanks. So I think that the reason why categories that we can understand as Marxian categories still make sense for us today is that it speaks to the fundamental economic logic of our economic system. So this logic has in its foundations has not really changed historically since Marx's time in the 800s, in the sense that we are in a world in which value is created through the fact that the majority is trapped in their condition as wage workers, and that private property of the means of production dominates, and thus fundamentally requires a non-democratic management of the economy. So I think all of these concepts are really important to then understand all of the other forms of oppression and violence that happen within the capitalist economy. So the point here is to say that what is peculiar of capitalism, I think this is important, is that while in previous economic systems, imagine like the system, for example, like America during the time of slavery, right? So slave systems are system in which their class system and their system in which coercion is explicit. Why is it explicit? Because it's very political, right? So how was surplus extracted and value created? It was created because the slave was subjugated politically and actually owned, right, as a commodity. So it was an explicit form of violence, and you could actually see who the oppressor was. And, you could also escape if you could. And actually, we're talking about Haiti, and I was just reading a wonderful novel of Isabel Allende. I forgot how I wrote it read it in Italian, but it's a beautiful book about actually the history of Haiti and the emancipation of the slave society there. And it's really like brutal. And of course, we know all the brutality of that. We don't need to discuss this. But the point here is that it's politically visible who your exploiter is. Yeah. And so this is why for example, all the slave societies, they rebelled, escaping, hiding, and then potentially getting rid of their oppressors. In capitalism, this oppression is not visible. And I think this is really the key to understand why people consent to it in a passive way and kind of accept it. Is because coercion becomes economic primarily. This doesn't mean that there's other form of coercions are not real, but what is peculiar of capitalism as a class system is that coercion is more hidden because it becomes more impersonal. So let me give you an example. While again, even if during the times of feudalism, the lord would extract the surplus from the serf directly through feudal law and sending troops in the case the serf did not give up a part of his or her labor to the lord. Right now, we're in a situation in which a Starbucks employee signs the work contract kind of willingly, right? There's supposedly no one there forcing you to go to work. You just do it because if you don't, you're going to be hungry and end up in the streets, right? So the point here is very important. It's the fact that you don't see exploitation as a political force, but exploitation becomes much more impersonal in the fact that we depend on the market. And so I think this unique feature of capitalism, which is kind of at the basis of Marx's analysis in Capital, is something that is very important to understand all other forms of oppression and all other forms of political violence within capitalism, because it is a system that has its own peculiar logic. So if we want to overcome capitalism, we got to understand what are the peculiar logics of this system in particular, and how they were different from previous class societies. And this is what allows us to then think about alternatives in a serious way, right? So I think this is why reading Capital makes sense, is that the type of conceptual tools help us understand what's unique of capitalism. And this is very important to understand all other forms of violence within the system, but we need to know what is specific of ours.
Right on. Thank you very much. Professor Mattei, I know there's a lot more that I would love to get into and that I'm sure my colleagues and those in the chat would like to get into. I don't know if how we all are on time and if we would want to go at least a little bit longer, but I understand if it's not possible, but I at least wanted to acknowledge where we are in the time. And
I'm happy to I'm happy to take on a couple more questions. It's always, I mean, I'm very happy to be here, and of course, it's always when a scholar, I mean, the type of work I do is a work in the history of Western capitalism, of course, and its historical reconstruction is limited to that specific space and time. But I do think, and so of course, issues of racial justice, which and all forms of topics that you guys as a movement fight for, and I completely feel strongly about, are not immediately part of the study. But I don't think this means that for this reason the type of critique to the more fundamental dynamics within our economic system are not useful for further causes that incorporate all other concerns of emancipation of various groups. I think the first thing is we need to realize that in order to have any form of social and racial justice, we got to emancipate ourselves from the oppression of the ruling white elite, which has very powerful instruments, and we got to learn them critically so that we can react in other ways. So this is kind of, I think, why this historical study of the capital order can provide insight for other forms of struggle that are not immediately the topic of my work.
So, all right, well, we do have some questions in the chat, and folks, if you could replace your questions, and I don't know if Geechee and Diallo, you had any others, but we have one here that I'll at least raise up. Could Dr. Mattei explain further what she meant by unilateral class war and how this helps provide insights into the nature of class struggle under austerity policies? I'm not sure if you feel like maybe you've answered that already, but if not, maybe say a word or two about that.
Yeah. So austerity is intelligent in how it functions. It functions intelligently because we don't perceive how classist austerity policies and austerity ideas are. And this is exactly because economists support these classes. Unilateral class war, what I mean is the fact that if policies are wielded by the institutions that rule us, and these policies are all about taking away resources from the people, to disempower them both politically and economically, so that, it's very hard to protest against a system when you depend on the system for your survival, right? And this is exactly the key here. This is exactly the key of economic coercion, is that we depend on market capitalism, and austerity increases our dependence so that it becomes more and more difficult to fight against it, right? And this fight is made even more difficult because austerity is so intelligent in the fact that it uses theories to justify it that tell us that what's happening is the only necessary way forward. And so this apolitical aspect is really what we need to consider as being the most political project of all. In the capital order, I study the origins of austerity in the 1920s in Italy. And what you see is that economists that were propelling pure economics as a new economic theory. So pure economics is the foundation of our mainstream economics that you still learn at school today. Okay, it's called mainstream economics. You can call it neoclassical economics. It was born specifically at the end of the 19th century. And in the 1920s, the years I talk about, these economists were saying, this is the only new economic theory we should think about. Well, in this moment in which they were eliminating class analysis from their models, these economists were writing, and I have quotes and quotes from archives. My work is all about archival reconstruction, in which they were talking about workers as pigs in their taverns, drinking wine and wasting all their money on women. This is like literally their words, while at the same time they were purporting these models that were supposedly so neutral and beyond class warfare. So this for me is very important, is to show how economic theory in its neutrality is actually pushing for these policies that the purpose of disempowering the majority. I already said this many times, but I guess this is the way I would answer this question again.
No, right on. Thank you very much.
But
yep, go ahead.
Just to speak to unilateral class war, it's also, it could be understood that in most of these systems, the elites mobilize. It's a one-sided class war, meaning one side is mobilized for their interest in doing the attack, and the other side doesn't even recognize itself as a class and doesn't organize as a class to advance its interest as a class. So I've often said the history of the United States could be defined as an ongoing one-sided class war.
Yeah.
Where one side is armed, equipped, and recognized and has their uniform, and the other side doesn't even recognize that it's in a conflict.
Yeah, exactly. I think you answered way better than me. That's exactly what I meant. I think the word one side is what I meant. Sorry, it's just that I was translating from Italian. Exactly. One-sided class war is exactly the right thing. And exactly because of what you mentioned is that the class of the losing class, which is the majority of people, doesn't recognize itself as being in a war because it's so subjugated that it has kind of internalized the dominant rhetoric of what people at the top who pretend a war isn't happening. But I just wanted to read you a quote that I have in my intro, actually, by Warren Buffett, who until a couple of years ago was actually the richest man in the world. And he says clearly that a class war is happening and that those at the top are winning it. So you know what? The point here is that economic experts, even if they pretend no war is happening, they know that they constantly need to protect the capital order. And thus, this is why they're always existentially worried about the fact that their system could fall down. I was trying to hope to find it. Here it is. There's a class warfare, all right, but it's my class, the rich class, that's making war and we're winning. So this is Warren Buffett actually quoted in 2006. So, you know, even if they pretend there's no war, they actually deep down know it. And that's why now they're so keen in increasing the interest rates, is because they see the threat of potential alternatives always, always in a way in the background of their minds.
But I also, it's just very much a struggle for me to define the white majority as victims of austerity when they enthusiastically call for it. Even now, in the most recent election cycle, the majority of the white American voting population, the only thing that has rescued the United States from sliding into absolute austerity is the consolidated minority votes, combined with the minority white voters with the majority non-white voters.
But Diallo, remember, this goes back, and excuse us for a second, Professor Mattei, but this goes back to our disagreement from other areas where I've said the same thing. It's not that I disagree with your criticism of the outcome and the conclusions, but if we're trying to understand how people end up making those decisions, I think the work that Professor Mattei is offering is important. So in other words, she is, from what I gather from the introduction alone, she is outlining a history and a process by which that ruling elite have convinced a majority of these white folks to work against their own interests.
But the thing is, Black people have been subjected to the same intensive doctrination, if not more intensive indoctrination. And then look, the majority of the world population has been subjected to more intensive austerity over longer periods of time than the white majority. Yeah, so that necessarily.
But look at what happens in neo-colonies. You get the neo-colonial ruling elite called from within the colonized population to perform the abuse of European colonists. So on a microcosmic way, that's why I was even saying selfishly earlier in the discussion that Mattei's work resonates with my own, because when we're dealing with and calling into question the
Coach's top thought leader,
we are responding to people who have been convinced by a propaganda to perform a white conservative anti-Black version against their own community. So I'm not.
I don't think they align. I don't think black elites on the African continent exploiting the black African masses is the same relationship as white elites and the white masses, because the white masses are oftentimes further to the right than the white elites. If you do look at the surveys, the white working class, rural white America, which I was raised in Missouri and Kansas, is oftentimes more further to the right and they want austerity. They celebrate austerity, and they try to speak to the issues caused by austerity by calling for more austerity. The Reagan is still a hero amongst the white majority, and he screwed over the white working class royally. So, okay, I just don't buy the fact that these poor white folks were just tricked, because this is their belief system. This is their identity. It's not just something that's been imposed on them from the outside.
No, identities are imposed from outside, though. All identities are imposed from outside. But go ahead, Professor Mattei.
Man, we just came out of Kuji Chakalia, self-determination. White folks don't have no Kuji Chakalia. These white folks are victims.
Go ahead. Go ahead. Come on now.
No, but I mean, listen, I completely get your point, and I think you're right to be. I mean, it's point that it make us all angry. But here, I think the point is, again, speaking to the question I received earlier, why Marx is relevant is we got to understand the power of ideology. Ideology is something that traps us and blocks our political imagination and has us think against our own interest. And this, you can either be, we can't essentialize evil. If we essentialize evil, because if we just say, oh, this white folk all deserve it, then that's not going to really help the class struggle to get out of this world of injustice, right? We need to, for how much we can blame them, just blaming them plays the logic of austerity. Blaming the white folk for voting for austerity, I think, has the risk of actually perpetuating the austerity logic, which is exactly the idea that if we are in our conditions, it's because we deserve it, right? Without seeing that actually what's really here is the power of ideology. And of course, we're all responsible. This is not to say that we should just victimize everyone, and people should take responsibility for their actions. But I also think that it's not so simple. We should be responsible for our actions, but at the same time, there is a curtain of ideology that helps discipline people into certain choices. And this is where I think scholarly work can help, is reconstruct how this happens, because it's not just because the white folk is just essentially evil, or the white working class is essentially evil, that he then goes and does horrible things against the black his black colleagues, working class. That's not. I think the essential evil is limited as a perspective, right? Because it doesn't really help. It's a perspective that doesn't give us a lot of tools to strike back, because either then we say we should just eliminate them all, or we should try to think how we can actually combine forces to struggle against the people who really benefit from this structural exploitation, violence at all levels. And this is where the power of ideology needs to be studied. And so, sure, we take responsibility, but we can't fall into the very austerity rhetoric that if we vote against our own interests, it's just our fault and we should just blame ourselves. Because I don't think that's politically constructive.
Listen, throughout my lifetime, and from the history that I'm aware of, the behaviors of the white majority have always been sympathized with. You're saying what I'm suggesting to say, no, it's time to call these people on the carpet. You're saying, oh, we can't just blame them. But, when these white people are out here shooting stuff up and doing mass shootings, they say, well, he's a loner. He's misunderstood. They white males in as a population, but white people as a whole have gotten the sympathetic point of view from the media, from academics, from the medical and psychological fields. The sympathetic view has not worked. You want more sympathy and understanding after over 400 years? We still supposed to be sympathetic and understanding.
I don't hear a call for Diallo. Come on, man.
agree.
Oh, I agree. I
Austerity,
agree with you, though. Yeah.
I'm anti-austerity. I'm anti-fascism. But I cannot sit here and say, well, whites are the victims. White majority, the white working class, are the co-conspirators. They are the perpetrators and imposers, not the victims. So I'm a victim of fascism, austerity, racism. The white majority, I'm with everything you're saying. But you cannot get in the victim box with me. Because if we're in the same box, I'm in the wrong box. All I'm saying is we have to come up with a new term then. Because the white working class, the white majority, the white masses are enthusiastic and active allies in austerity, capitalism, fascism, and global white hegemony and capitalism. They are not victims of it. That's all I gotta say.
So I don't hear anybody. Yeah. I don't hear the argument over let's have a pity party and recognize the victimhood. Yeah, no, I'm hearing an attempt to relatively objectively understand how groups are manipulated and encouraged to certain conclusions. That's what I'm hearing. So I'm not, it's not, hold on. So again, everybody's always talking about let Diallo finish. Diallo don't let nobody finish. So I again think, Diallo, you continue to slide those goalposts in these conversations to make a point and to make an argument that's not entirely the centerpiece or what's being said by those co-paneling with you.
So
let me
listen.
Hold Diallo.
No, I'm done.
So I am interested in, again, I can agree that particularly in the United States, and when it comes to engagement with, first of all, that's why I like the approach of colonialism. I think those who understand colonialism are able to reconcile the specifics of class oppression among whites and the differences that occur among the colonized and the world majority. They're able to, I think, better synthesize the contradictions there and perform an analysis that's helpful. So here in the United States, I am not at all disagreeing with Diallo's conclusions, which are objective, right? And I'm not arguing that you are either. But in endeavoring to understand why white working class people would reach certain conclusions, I think your work seems, I've only read the introduction, seems to be pointing us to an interesting direction. Yeah. And also, as you said, your context is Europe, and the mid and early 20th century. I did want to ask, so I'm happy to have anybody come back to this, but I did want to ask specifically about the conferences you referenced in your introduction that took place in Brussels, and I can't remember now the other in Genoa, in Genoa, that you describe as being essential in developing the what I would say is the propaganda that would be targeted to white working people in encouraging them to accept policies that would actually work against them. And in that context, in that sense, I would argue that white working class are victims of an austerity policy. Not to compare Diallo and not to put in the same box with Diallo, but to say in the context of Europe, I don't think it's a leap to make that point. But anyway, so if you would say a word about those conferences, and then or Geechee, go ahead and then maybe she can respond to both.
Well, okay, so I guess I was trying to think of an example, right? So a week ago, I rewatched the Attica uprising, and you had the white folks in Attica who live in the community. Their family members work for the prison. They capture the prison, and obviously they are workers, white workers for the prison. And so when you're thinking about victims and you're thinking about the policies and all these other things, I wanted you and Diallo to kind of speak from that example, or even white workers not being paid a certain amount of money. They go on strike. The strike breakers come in, black workers. And then eventually there's white workers inducing violence on the black workers. The capitalists are up there sitting in the ivory towers chilling. The police help the white workers. And so like in each American cities, you see that constant. And then in the Attica situation, you see is I guess I wanted to speak to those examples and see, or for both of y'all to
But
explain
then
what y'all
but
saying.
remember that part though, the Attica situation, when it came down to paying the prison guards for their time, even while they were captured, the state said, we're only paying you for the hours where you could have conceivably been considered to be at work. So even though you were held as prisoners, we're not paying you for the hours between like midnight and 8 a.m. So
and they came in and killed some of the guards too. Yeah.
So I just think that that's funny. But anyway, sorry, go ahead, Professor Mattei.
Yeah, no. So this is like I'm really happy we're having all these conversations because it really helps see where this work can connect with the struggles that I think are most important today, which are clearly intrinsically about class and race. But I really think that what's important is that we don't fall in the trap of austerity, which is that to just look at society as made of segments of individual identities. And here I think is where we really need to realize that it's successful for austerity, the fact that we feel also divided. And certainly austerity hits us all differently. And Black Americans and other minorities are the most screwed by austerity in the United States today. So there's degrees in which you are subjugated and exploited under capitalism and under austerity capitalism. And definitely can say that white male fare better than Black women, for sure. There's no doubt about this, right? But this doesn't mean that there's not in a way a common oppressor. And that's where the focus of my work goes, is to analyze the strategies, the historically long strategies of this oppressor in creating a situation by which we lose all solidarity amongst each other. And so for me, this is very important, is that the focus here is, how was it that we all come to accept this terribly exploitative system? And some people come to accept it more than others, also because, of course, white folks benefit from the capitalism, American capitalism more. That's of course it's the case. But at the same time, we need to keep in mind that our condition is not, as diverse as it is, has a common enemy that is not something that has just been needs to be taken for granted, but it's an enemy that actually has wielded some strategies historically, and those are the ones that we need to really study. So these conferences of Brussels and Genoa, for example, 1920, 1922, was the first time in which economists were called to advise governments. And now we got used to the fact that the government is full of economists that go, someone like Larry Summers, who supposedly was, advising someone like Barack Obama. Well, Larry Summers is like the worst austere economist we could have even imagined. So how is it that these experts have gained the authority to sorry, the baby is crying and I'm getting excited. They have gained the authority to actually advise governments. It's here that we need to really think critically, because it's not a given that experts, economists who have their PhDs, who come from ruling and elite institutions, and they're all primarily white folks, should be having a greater say about how to run the economy than us. So this is really the point here. What is the arguments they use that are so appealing and are so strong that we end up all thinking they're the only ones out there, right? So these conferences are all about the construction of the financial code of austerity, that the crisis is because people are living beyond their means. Also now, why do we have inflation? Oh, it's because people are consuming too much and people are not going to work much, right? So always making the masses guilty. This is the strategy of austerity. There's a crisis. It's not because of the structural contradiction of capitalism and the fact that it's an unstable system. It's the fact that the majority, who always suffers, is behaving not correctly, is misbehaving. So it's always about the problem of living beyond our means. And this is a rhetoric that we've kind of all take for granted, but it's not something to take for granted. And these conferences really show the way, and I can't give the details, but if you look at the chapter, really the subtle rhetoric that for us is so normal today, that has been actually constructed and refined for 100 years, to the point that then we end up really never focusing too much on the oppressor, because the oppressor appears as neutral, and it's even like kind of behind the curtains in all this economic violence. So the point here is to actually say, no, let's point our finger to what's going on in terms of the economic elite that rules us. And we got to realize that their strategies are intelligent, but we need to deconstruct them once we understand them.
Is there any chance, by any chance, are you at all related to Ugo Mattei?
Yes, yes, he's my dad.
Are you serious?
Yeah, he's my dad. Yeah.
It just, I was trying to think where your last name sounds familiar, and I just realized it's because unfortunately I'm only familiar with his work in terms of the book Plunder.
Yeah.
But
he wrote with Laura Nader. Yeah.
Yeah, which I thought was great. But anyway, it just occurred to me. So anyway, right on. Okay, shout out to your pops and to that lineage. All right, right on. Anyways, did we hit? Here's a question. What is your opinion on modern monetary theory and on community banking? I actually had a similar thought about MMT as I was reading your introduction. Do you have any thoughts on it and its relative increasing popularity, I guess, or
yeah? So
and community banking was the other part of the question.
Thanks. So again, I think that a radical critique to capitalism is helpful also to realize that certain frameworks that supposedly appear as alternative way forward are not alternatives all the way after all. So modern monetary theory is a typical example of how, in a way, it's a framework that is very Western centric, first of all, right? So it has no understanding of class divides within the United States, nor class divides within the global economy. So the point here is that it creates a false narrative by which our economic system is eternally flexible towards, greater social expenditures. So the idea that we can actually use the budget as we like and spend more. So I think this is a problem, because actually it doesn't go to the reality of the fact that capitalism in its own function has limits. And as soon as these limits are breached, then we have a pool of economic experts, including those who support modern monetary theory, who revert back to austerity and tell us the only way forward is for people to sacrifice their livelihoods in the name of monetary stability. So this is obvious right now, I think. When there's inflation, MMT has very little to say. But the fact that inflation is a problem, right? Because MMT kind of takes for granted that we are in a capitalist world, and this is the only world possible. Fundamentally, it's a way to find a small leeway in certain very specific countries, by the way, because MMT works for the United States and not for the rest of the world, because of course the United States have enormously more economic power with respect to other countries. And even in the United States, I think that it's depicting an idealized form of capitalism that is too flexible from what it really is. And so once it has to fight inflation,
if I understand their argument, though, I think you're right about fundamentally their point that MMT doesn't. It seems like as I learn more about it, it's a way for folks not to address capitalism specifically, but they do have an argument around inflation. I mean, that basically it's not anything that it's not real in the context of a country like this one, the United States, that can produce pretty much whatever it wants in certain. That inflation is the way I read MMT, or I'm reading it. In fact, the way they seem to be, specifically Stephanie Kelton's book, she seems to be arguing that that inflation is, well, she wouldn't say it this way, but that inflation is the capitalists' way of getting to what you're saying about austerity. That it's a false flag claim to impose austerity on the country, when in reality they can invest in any area they can pretty much invest in any area that this country can be productive in, and provide for and solve all the contradictions of inflation if they want to, but they only say that they can't because of inflation they can impose austerity. But I'm not here to defend MMT. I'm just saying that I just thought of that as you were answering. I think in general you're correct about what
that's interesting. I just feel like it's a move, like, once more, that has in common with austerity depoliticizing the economic sphere. So again, it becomes all about like technicalities, right? If you just learn like this technical aspect, then you will see how our economic system can really deliver on its promises. I'm sorry, but capitalism is a political system in which there are class divides and that strives on the exploitation and the oppression of the majority. Even when you talk in the abstract about investment presupposes the fact that there is going to be a large majority of people who will get exploited. So this, I think, is a problem, is that in a way, it once more falls into this depoliticization of the economic discourse, this divide between the economic and the political, and the economic as being, again, the realm of the economic expert to discuss and us to just really learn. But in doing this, it really, like, I think, misses the point of our socioeconomic system in general. And about inflation, I've read the Deficit Myth and other works in MMT. What I can say now is that there's debates on why inflation is happening, and the fact that, for example, it's happening because of the huge political power of the employers and of big corporations to increase prices. It's not something that you will solve by just state investment. You see what I mean? There's all these political aspects that need to be confronted, I think, and that doesn't get us to it's not going to be solved with an easy recipe. So I think this is the thing. Either we understand that capitalism as such is an economic system that is incompatible with democracy and well-being, or we're going to be stuck in trying to hide and give false hope to the majority by maintaining the rule of the expert, because ultimately it is an economic elite who is trying to still kind of dominate our economic decisions here.
Can I ask a question? Move back to fascism.
Yeah.
Fascism is a ideology or an outlook, but it also is a goal. Fascism defines very specific goals that are to be attained, and the methods and strategies that fascists use to achieve these goals are, very bloody and violent. Mm-hmm. So as you're saying, austerity is feeding fascism, and more whites. I see, in Italy just elected a fascist government, and Europeans are allowing Africans to drown in the Mediterranean. The United States is saturated with guns, and those white people with guns are forming right-wing militias. Yeah. Where do you see any evidence that austerity is going to be retracted in the next few economic or political cycles? Or are we on the path, from your point of view, to the ultimate conclusion of fascism?
Yeah, no, unfortunately, I see now that austerity has come back with a vengeance, and has come back in all sorts of political settings, from more authoritarian leaning fascist governments to supposedly more democratic governments. So this is a very sad reality, but I also do think that this is why we can't leave decision-making power in the hands of the usual suspects, and we need to actually fight back with alternatives that are actually real alternatives, right? So I look at fascism in my book, which is the fascism of the originator of actual historic fascism, which is Mussolini in the 1920s. But certainly, as you were pointing out, there are, even in Italy right now, Giorgia Meloni directly hails to Mussolini as one of her predecessors. And what you see here is that once more, I think the state not only now is using austerity and increasing precariousness of people, but it also needs to use the strong law and order violent arm of the state, as you were pointing out, right? So the fact that it's now passing a whole bunch of decrees, for example, in Italy right now, that explicitly criminalize political opposition, right? So the criminalization of political opposition is something that in the United States we constantly see everywhere. We very well know that we are not in a place where you can actually express your political ideas without encountering certain drawbacks. And this is something that I think is increasingly happening, is that in a moment, the more there is opposition to austerity, the more the logic of the elite will be to use the state not only to wield violent economic policy, but also to use its arm of law and order, and thus criminalize protests. For example, now climate protests are being criminalized everywhere in the West, right? So this is something that is also very important to keep in mind. I feel that austerity is one weapon that is often combined with more explicit coercion that can go all the way to tortures. I mean, in the United States, Guantanamo is still open. There's brown people that are constantly being tortured because of supposedly, we very well know they have not even been officially convicted. So that's the
You
thing,
better
right?
stop
We don't
that
even need to go
lying,
all the way
Professor
to
Mattei.
fascism.
Obama closed
exactly.
Guantanamo just like he freed
Exactly.
he freed the slaves.
Exactly. Just as he bombed. I mean, yeah.
and brought peace and power to the world.
But
just quickly, I have to say I do disagree with I think everyone on this, that George Jackson was right. Fascism is already here. And what I think confuses people is that we're looking for a cinematic display in our time of what it should look like, when in fact it is happening. It's been here, and because it doesn't look like a Nazi death camp or a World War II film or a black and white footage of Mussolini, we're like, oh no, it still could come. And no, this is it. This is what it looks like in the 21st century, with new technology, new media, new, more sophisticated ways of distributing the pain beyond first world vision. Anyway. But
I completely agree. I mean, there's different forms of authoritarian capitalism. That's how I would call it. Because fascism, fascism is, it depends how much we want to increase and just like increase the use of the word and deflate it in a way. But the point is that fascism was a specific historical episode in a specific country. And then we use the word more generally to define certain characteristic of fascism. But maybe we should just say, capitalism is authoritarian. As technological innovation moves forward, we also see different ways in which coercion happens that is much more subtle, but much more powerful in keeping us all disciplined, right? So there's so many different ways in which the population is tamed into accepting the social order. And I think the point of the historical study I make is that the comparison between a liberal democracy in the 1920s and a fascist regime in the 1920s shows how similar, and this goes exactly to your point, how similar the dynamics were in the two countries, and how actually supportive of Mussolini the liberal elite was in the 1920s. JP Morgan Chase financing Mussolini, all of the central bankers of the time around the globe supporting Mussolini. So this is where you see the alliance, the stark alliance between fascist regime and supposedly democratic countries, and the similar treatment of the citizens within, right? So these parallels and alliances between supposed democracies and fascist regimes, I think, help exactly bring us towards an analysis that points to your direction of the fact that we are experiencing forms of authoritarianism or even fascism without fundamentally realizing it. Because, hey, guess what? Mussolini came to power without a coup. The coup, the March on Rome, was not really a coup. He was called by the king to mediate a political crisis. So he came in power with all the constitutional legitimacy. Hitler was voted for, right? So as you were pointing out, like the fact that we imagine like that there's going to be like this like stark historical episode that will define we're under fascism now, that has never happened historically. People under fascism in the 20s in Italy didn't know, oh, now we're under a dictatorship. Things evolve and evolve in subtle ways so that then historically we can reconstruct moments as fascist. But the reality is that we live in a present that is authoritarian and will never be like the past fascism 100 years ago, because capitalism has evolved in ways that make it in a way easier to oppress us without having to have a duce in government.
No, I mean, well, here the liberals tell us that we're only under fascism when Trump's in office. And now that Biden is in office, we're free. So we're only in fascism at 4 years at a time in the United States.
Yeah,
anyway, my bad.
exactly.
Geechee, you wanted to, go ahead.
No, so there was this time that I was working with some people in Baltimore, and this sister who believes that she at one of the foundations to stand in the gap for Black people was suggesting that our collective work with a Rockefeller grant, and I'm like, I don't think that's going to work out, because the work that we do critique Rockefeller and expose it. But anyway, I said that to say, so the new school, I'm I know Derek was there and I didn't know much about it, but I'm curious. I did look around and see, like, it's tied to Europe. It's pretty white from what I see online, and I'm curious.
Don't start talking about our employers, because Morgan State is a Freedom Revolutionary University institution. Right. So let's
right. Y'all fighting for freedom with Boeing and Norfolk Grumman and all of these. Yeah, you're right.
And Derek Hamilton's writing a forward to my book.
That's my guy.
Diallo already got me canceled from all the promotion I'm gonna be able to do for it. So let's not totally ruin my whole setup here.
I just want to know how you grapple with Rockefeller's connection to the school and critique of capitalism.
Yeah.
And,
no, definitely. I mean, the new school has been very expressive of how austerity is not just. I talk about austerity as a state-driven economic policy because it's about public policy, but the private sector, private institutions are always undertaking austerity. And the new school is a typical example. The administration has been laying off all the weakest part of the employees, have been with the excuse of the COVID emergency. We've fired loads of people, right? This in a way is happening still now. So the fact there was a big strike because the new school administration does not want to pay part-time employees the benefits that would make their conditions decent. So the fact that the new school is a private institution and I'm an employee of a private institution that does profit out of a surplus extraction of its employees and is very much against paying paying benefits to its employees. So they are trying to keep wages low and not give unemployment, retiring benefits. So this is all like the austerity is part and parcel of the new school administration. And this is why we had a strike that was just concluded, but it was a big strike that lasted almost a month, in which there was a solidarity for the part-time faculty, also from full-time faculty, but it was nasty. I mean, they threatened to not pay us, and they dismiss people. So we're not talking about a happy island of, so this is the thing about, unfortunately, how hypocritical our system is, that institutions that which supposedly represent the hub of progressivism, right, the New School, the University in Exile, they treat their employers exactly like all other private businesses treat their employers, which is they don't care. They just want to extract as much surplus as possible. And this, for me, is a problem. And and this is done, of course, also, I think, using the identity politics card, by which now we have a Black president. And the Black president has actually fired money more than his predecessor, and was capable of actually doing austerity in a more brutal way, because of this whole, it's difficult to, you see what I mean? I don't want to get fired myself after this show, but
no, what
really,
the president, what your new president should do as a
this
PR
is the reality.
scheme, a good PR response would be to pluck a high performing faculty member from an HBCU and bring him up there.
I was already gonna give you your plugs. Like, you messing it up. I was throwing
I'm messing it up.
I was
you
like,
gonna do that?
Yeah, I was gonna put some cream.
That's
what they should do.
But
that
that's
would
what
cover
they should
all
do.
of that.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. But as we know, so you see what I mean? It's like, it's real, like how this struggle, it's a real struggle for livelihood of employees at the New School as well. And as usual, the weakest suffer. And the board of trustees hires the right people to do the dirty job. So that then, if students, and now there's a big group of students, actually the students were still occupying the university center, and there was a big Black component. The Black students were actually heading the mobilization. But of course, there were people actually accusing even Black students of being racist, or playing the racial card, because the administration has some Black members within it. So you see what I mean? How it's easy to kind of defeat also a struggle which is of solidarity and of class, using these instruments. So that it's I think what's happening at the New School is very indicative of how intelligent our system is to keeping hang of who's in power.
I still think the late John Thompson had my favorite response to the race card. He said, "Don't get mad if I play the race card when you dealt the hand."
Yeah, exactly. Absolutely. I agree. Completely.
But Diallo, I'm not triggering you intentionally. I know you don't like the ball chasers and discussions of coaches and athletes, but I don't mean to overdo it. But
yeah,
go ahead, man. Go ahead.
Well, again, when I agree that fascism is here and it's on the rise. But that it means something different for African people. It means more overt racism, more racialized violence, and an intensification of the ongoing genocide. And it's kind of difficult for me to sit and think about, well, what provokes this man to slaughter my people? What provokes these people to allow my brothers and sisters to drown in the Mediterranean? Forgive me for not being as interested in what causes whites to behave such a way, when we're direct and ongoing victims of their predatory behaviors. But another thing I want to talk about is this white working class solidarity, as if it will translate into some larger solidarity for the whites with the non-white population majority of the world. We have examples like there was this thing in the United States called the Red State Rebellion, where people in conservative right-wing Republican states, such as teachers, went on strikes. And people were lauding the teachers, but those same states where they have teachers striking for white teachers' labor solidarity are also in those same schools imposing bans on teaching critical race theories and other racist policies in the same school district. So where is there any evidence that an awakening of the white masses to the hyper exploitation of the white elites would translate into any type of humane engagement with the other oppressed populations across the globe?
I mean, I think that to try to give a sense to like point to who actually the oppressor and the enemy is important, because I mean it's studied that the more precarious the conditions of people get, the more you're going to like get angry and violent against the people weaker than you. No, this is like, I mean, actually like a sociological historical process. So I think it's very important for people to realize that the solution is not to go and vote for the most xenophobic and racist president like they do in Italy right now, but it's actually to realize that the economic system we're in is the real trap, and we got to get out of it, right? So in a way, this I think is important, because austerity points to the wrong enemy, because it is important to find a scapegoat, right? People are angry. The poorer they get, the angrier they get, and they want to find someone to hate. And I think to point to guess what? You should be hating those at the top, because those are really benefiting from your misery. I think this is actually an important point to make. Now, the book here is not trying to like be in solidarity to any specific working class group. It's just trying to give a sense of what is the logic that produces this power structure in our society, how it's formed. And I think once people realize that they should blame the billionaires rather than like envy them because they like are so hot and like look so cool, I think this is important.
But Diallo, but I don't agree with that either, because again, Professor Mattei isn't writing a book that's meant to address the colonized and to inform them about how to deal with their colonization. That's not how I see the purpose of her book. And in these moments, when we gather here, the way I conceive of it is, I get your point about not caring about what is causing the attack. But after in moments like this, I consider gatherings like this, or for instance, when I'm in a classroom, these are moments of respite or a ceasefire or a moment to catch our breath, a moment to step outside of the heat of a battle and to reflect. So you're right. If someone is attacking me, I'm going to defend myself and try to end them and all of everything about them. I have no problem about that. But after the fact, especially if the attack is persistent and repetitive, when there is a moment to reflect or a respite or a ceasefire, I do want to find out what the hell is going on. If somebody swings on me in the street, I'm going to defend myself. But after a certain point, I would want to say, what the hell caused that? Why were you even doing that? Even if they've been fully dispatched. So again, when we gather here, I think this is not the moment to act as if we are in the immediacy of the fight and needing to swing. This is where we do have a break and the privilege to gather in collegial comradeship and find out and assess and try to learn what is driving the persistent attacks. So
I appreciate and agree with that. And I do want to understand, but we have to base that understanding on, that's why I'm trying to draw the parallels. If we're going to say, well, austerity leads to fascism, but we have evidence of white hyper-aggression, fascist aggression within, as you even said, it's not even appropriate to call it fascism. We should call it capitalism. But then we understand that white aggression predates capitalism. You know, you say capitalism is 300 years old, but white colonization, invasion, genocide, and dehumanization of non-Black people it goes back to the 1400s and even the Greco-Roman Empire. So if we really are trying to be academic and suss out meaning and understanding, then we got a lot further to go. But if we're going to limit it to Western Europe and fascism and austerity, I'm speaking from within that arena.
Right. But I just wanted to make clear that the point here is to say that we should focus on anti-capitalist battles, because the idea is not that austerity leads to fascism. The idea is that fascism flourishes by austerity, because austerity is the right economic recipe for all elites, also in liberal, supposedly democratic settings. And so the point here is to say, hey, look, the best most efficient way to do austerity is through fascism, and this is exactly what capitalism needs. So the common enemy here is capitalism, and we well know that the large scale oppression of Africans and of all forms of horrible, also racial oppression has become key to our economic system with capitalism, right? So we can go back and, of course, there were divisions already before, but capitalism has exacerbated our racial injustices and the oppression of Black people all over the place. So I think it's important to fixate our mind that the problem here is not just like to get rid of racism, but to get rid of also racism that is fomented and exacerbated by capitalism. And I think this is a very important point, that otherwise we risk losing a lot of thrust to the potential battle if we don't get the point that the problem here is not just fascism, but it's capitalism. And this is the whole point of my book, is to say that fascism is the best result of capitalism once we really understand what capitalism is about. And I agree with you that there has been racial oppression even before capitalism, but it is a historical fact that is a known that it is with capitalism that racial oppression becomes structural to our system. And this is, I think, something that is the reason why there needs to be an overcoming of the basis of the economic system as such.
I appreciate that. I would say that capitalism, we've seen even in the so-called socialist republics, we've seen even within the socialist and communist parties that white domination and racism and discrimination is present and a struggle to purge. So I agree. I am anti-capitalist to my core, but also white hegemony, global white hegemony, which is the father and mother of capitalism, Western militarism, things that exist in communist or socialist or social democratic nations of the northern, Swedish, Finland, these countries that are supposed to have figured this thing out. So, I agree with you. But as far as African people, we have to go further than that, because our oppression is beyond what anything that
right. And we appreciate Professor Mattei for writing her one book.
I appreciate
about her one immediate focus, and then we don't have to expect that it's going to satisfy.
But I'm not asking it to. But I mean, being that this is Black Power Media and we have a predominantly African audience, we have to address and critique these things from a Pan-African and a Black perspective, and we have to relate it to Black people. So even if we discuss white folks' internal struggles, we say, what does it mean to us? How does it potentially or actively impact African people? So we still have to discuss it from an African-centered point of view.
That's why I think that a critique of austerity is even more important for Black folks, because they are the worst victims of this political technocratic project that is the project of austerity. And so this is, for me, I think is the case. And also I wanted to just say that we have to watch out when we talk about socialism, what we mean by it, because I would argue that the types of socialist systems that we've seen historically realized so far weren't really what emancipation of wage relations would be all about, because actually, unfortunately, all these systems have maintained forms of class hierarchies and racial hierarchies that are not exactly, I think, a true alternative of a very democratic type that is the one that I think we should thrive to achieve. So I don't think taking, that again buys into the austerity logic to say, hey, look, we've experimented other possibilities, they all failed, so this is the best one we're in today. Is very important to keep in mind that the type of socialist systems that we've seen historically weren't really what emancipation could be about. So I think there is potential to do much better if we understand how to actually get beyond the pillars of capitalism, and that hasn't happened historically yet. But I don't think it means that it can't happen.
Right on. Well, Professor Mattei, I really appreciate you coming through this morning. I look forward to finishing your book and maybe doing this again at some point. And thank you very much. Appreciate you coming through this morning.
Thanks.
It's been a
Thank you.
fascinating discussion. Take good care.
Thanks to all. Thanks to Diablo for your critical remarks. I mean, I agree with all your points, and I think my work just makes a mini contribution in a sphere that has not yet been explored in a critical way, because again, economists tend to depoliticize what they do. So once we understand the austerity is as you put it, one-sided class warfare, that is just one element that can help the struggles of the radical type that you're referring to. But I think it can help really figure out what the tools of the oppressors look like in order to defeat them.
Right on. Thank you very much. Take good care. Thank you very much. Take good care. All right, everybody. Thanks. I really do. I appreciate Professor Clara Mattei coming on. Thanks to Josh and Aaliyah for helping put that together, and for the publisher sending us a copy of the book. And what else? And for the remixers for suggesting some names. And to my colleagues for another good show. Anything else you want to say? You all want to leave us with before we get out of here?
I just want to say I'm going to keep the white working class victims of austerity in my thoughts and prayers, even though they voted and fought for the very austerity they're suffering under.
This guy. Hey, no, I think
I said thoughts and prayers. That's about saying, what they give us.
You listen, I don't know. Like I said, I rewatch what'd you call it, damn thing? Attica, and I don't know, man. The way they filmed the documentary and centering, and even the reparations of the money that they gave afterwards, like I wouldn't really shedding no tears for them people losing their parents that's prisoner guards.
You know, the prisoners didn't execute the guards.
Yeah, I didn't say that.
The militia and
that was the point. And again, but the point,
the white folks killed the guards. The guards killed the guards. The prisoners were threatened to execute the guards, but they didn't.
But I keep thinking. But I hear you both injecting issues of feelings and emotions, and what I'm advocating is an objective, unemotional analysis. So I'm not asking people to feel sorry for the guards. I'm saying it's to understand. I think to get a better understand, and I think it's important to understand that the fact that the guards were themselves killed by the very people they were defending and working for, and so I mean that's that. So it's not to say to feel sorry for them. If anything, it's just you could do it the other way. You could use it to make fun of them. And say, but my point is, if we want to understand beyond the emotion, which is not unimportant, but if we want to understand beyond that, I think it is important to look at some of this context. So it's not to say that I'm not saying to feel sorry for them, but I want to understand what's going on.
Capital and elite don't care about you no more than I don't want to say no more. They don't care about you either. At all costs, to squash any kind of uprising we have, they're gonna take you out too.
But I just want to tell black folks, white folks told us when we overcome the monarchy and impose democracy, it's going to be all good. When we overcome capitalism and impose those, it's going to be all good. When we overcome theocracy and have secular systems, it's going to be all good. They always saying the current white shit gets replaced by some new white shit, things gonna change for us. But we just as enslaved and oppressed under the new white shit as we are under the old. So if you want, as an African person, I say be anti-capitalist, be anti-austerity, and definitely be anti-fascist.
But don't be anti-intellectual. Don't be anti-willing to study and learn and to interpret other people's work. So and on some level, I admit a defensiveness. I'm hearing a thread in your argument that suggests I don't need to read it. I don't need to understand it.
You see them degrees on my wall? You see them there degrees? I bring them up. I'll go get them off the wall.
Plaques. I don't know what they mean. I don't know what you read to get them.
Degrees.
I'm just saying.
And I can bring them over here if you challenge me to. I'll bring them. I got receipts. I am pro-academic. I'm surrounded by books. I'm not anti-intellectual. I always say my mantra is revolution is an intellectual endeavor. But hey, we gotta be, we still gonna put some soul and rhythm into our shit too. So all I'm saying is the real task of the scholar is what you do is make these complex academic scholarly concepts and articulate them so our people can grasp, digest, and make them functional. We got to bring this shit out of the realm of scholarship and theory and put it into the realms of strategy and applied tactics.
Guerrilla intellectual.
This is for you and for Emma.
Did you call bank? I called game.
I don't even get that joke.
I don't even care. I'm just playing
and
the drop
Pele,
because she mad at me playing drop. So this is
over.
We try
and before we go, no, this is my final word. Pele wasn't Uncle Tom. Pele was a coon and a sellout.
The coach's top thought leader.
There you go. All right, everybody. Thanks to Dr. Mattei. Thanks to Josh and Aaliyah. Thanks to the remixers. Thanks to my comrades and colleagues, Geechee and Diallo. Catch you next time under a new name, new logo. I don't know, but same banner under here, right here, BPM. So keep it locked.
Is trending. Can we come up with a gang sign too?
Yeah, man, we got to do a gang sign. We got to do a gang sign.
Let's go.
I mix what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like, what I like.